Chapter 4860. Eldest young Sir Chin coldly swept Miss Fong a glance, and said apathetically, "Take her away. Let go, let go, let go of me. You dare to treat me like this? Ah, you guys. Let go. Let go," Miss Fong shouted angrily, but she was rudely dragged out of the crowd by the royal guards. Miss Mississippi Manager Gu hastily chased after her, hopping with anxiety. This time, the Chin Estate's royal guards didn't waste words with Miss Fong, and directly grabbed her arm, dragging the wailing Miss Fong out. Morong Yen and Morong Zhao silently met each other's eyes before silently shaking their heads and retracting their gazes. Fortunately, they had called off the engagement with this Miss Fong long ago. If they really married this person, with her IQ, wouldn't their family have no peaceful days in the future? After retracting her gaze, Xiao Mu's gaze seemed to roam around the crowd. After returning to her tent, the little stoic sat at the table and subconsciously turned a cup in her hand. She remained silent for a long time. Morong Fei yawned. Just as she was about to pull open the blankets to continue sleeping, she saw the little stoic pondering when she turned around. "What's wrong?" Morong Fei opened her mouth and paused with one hand tugging at a corner of the blankets. Xiao Mu returned to her senses and turned to look at her. "It's fine, go rest." Morong Fei lifted the blankets and crawled to the short table next to her. She picked up a clean teacup and poured a cup of water, saying with a smile, "Don't worry, only Miss Fong, that dumb person, would fall for such a shallow trick. Anyone with a bit of vigilance probably wouldn't." Arbor suddenly reached out and pressed down on the back of her hand. Morong Fei's hand abruptly paused, and her hand was pressed down. The teacup made a fine clatter and landed on the short table. Arbor reached out to take the teacup and sniffed it with knitted brows before saying gravely, "This tea can't be drunk." Morong Fei jolted in fright, and a nervous expression instantly appeared on her face. "But you also drank it just now." "It's not the tea's problem." Arbor took out a small knife and scraped a layer of powder off the cup's rim. Morong Fei immediately clenched her 5 fingers. Her entire body stiffened as she sat up straight. "It's the mouth of the cup that was smeared with powder. Hurry up and inform your 2 brothers." The moment Arbor's words fell, Morong Fei could not care less about her disheveled appearance, as she hurriedly put on an outer robe and dashed out. Arbor also chased after him, only to see the tent beside him move slightly, and a black shadow flashed past. The little stoic sneered and stopped. "Formation map." She flicked out a piece of paper from under her sleeve. The formation map turned into a shadow and instantly enveloped the camp. With the place where she stood as the starting point, a trapping array was set up in a matter of minutes. Dozens of flying needles shot out from her body and flew in all directions of the formation. Did he really think that everyone was as stupid as Miss Fong? If he lured her out, she would chase after him alone? Ha! She was not going to chase after him. At this time, the black-clothed man hidden in the shadows couldn't help but curse inwardly. This really is a little pervert, completely not following the rules. Currently, the camp was surrounded by a trapping array. If he wanted to forcefully break out, he would definitely be seen through. This damn girl. He didn't expect that he would be forcefully made a fool out of by this girl. He originally thought that after the incident just now, the damn girl would definitely be physically and mentally exhausted. He didn't expect her to still be so vigilant and detect the abnormality at the rim of the cup in less than a second. The camp that had quieted down for less than an hour started clamoring again. Chapter 4861. Arbor used a formation diagram to construct a trapping formation, making it impossible for the black-clothed person to escape. After locking onto this person's aura, she touched the little white snake coiled around her wrist. The little white snake immediately turned into an extremely thin white shadow and abruptly scuttled into the dark night. Arbor narrowed her eyes. After taking a few steps, she saw everyone pouring out of their tents. The commoners all looked a bit alarmed, and they anxiously asked after looking back and forth, "What happened? What now? It can't be that a monster is attacking the camp, right?" Young Master Omega Kotoko lifted the tent flap and involuntarily knitted his brows when he saw the clamorous scene before him. Too many things had happened today. He didn't expect another wave to rise before one wave had even subsided. They hadn't even entered the Pond Lotus sacred realm yet. Who the hell knew how many more deceptive things would happen after they entered? Arbor drew a tracking talisman in the air and sent it flying with a flick of her finger. Then she leisurely walked toward her target. A moment later, the great void serpent's 3-meter-long figure flashed past and suddenly coiled around Arbor, pulling her several dozen meters back. At the same time, flames soared into the sky and exploded inside the camp with a loud explosion. Arbor's eyes instantly turned several degrees colder and harsher, and an indecipherable glimmer flickered in her eyes. Her gaze landed on the raging flames, and it was so cold that people couldn't discern the emotions in her eyes. A dozen or so Qin estate guards hastily rushed over, and the water spiritualists quickly brought the fiery scene under control. "How's the situation?" Eldest Qin walked over with quick steps, a bit of worry hanging on his face. "Reporting to eldest young master, it's fine. It's all under control now." Eldest Qin glanced at Arbor and saw the little stoic's frosty face being coiled around by the great void serpent that was several dozen meters long. The serpent shrunk bit by bit and turned into a slender little white snake. It wore a small crown on its head, and its small head was tilted. It no longer had its giant tail, and its pair of watery eyes looked adorably at the frightened commoners around them. When they saw this several dozen meters long serpent just now, everyone was stupefied. Some were so scared that their legs went soft, and they couldn't walk. There were also people who were shrouded in fear, crying and screaming. It was truly a lively scene. "Is everyone all right?" Old Steward Luo ran over from behind with his fat belly. Arbor's cold gaze slid past the old manager and swept past the faces of everyone present. In the end, his gaze landed on the few young masters of the Qin estate. "Someone wants my life, do you know that?" The eldest young master's face darkened slightly, and he hurriedly nodded and said, "Jojo, don't worry. We will do our best to investigate this matter." Arbor looked at him with a deep gaze. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly, revealing a trace of a smile that was not a smile. "Oh, who do you think this person can break into the camp at night and accurately find me in so many large tents?" Old Steward Luo frowned slightly and tried to smooth things over with an apologetic smile. "Little miss, this is just an accident. Someone trespassed into the camp, and the young masters didn't know about it. But to put it bluntly, the Qin estate's guards had no obligation to protect everyone's safety for free. Regardless of whether it was in the past or now, you can only rely on yourself." Arbor nodded apathetically and didn't say anything before turning around and walking back to his tent. "Jojo," eldest young Master Qin hastily called out and turned around to harshly reprimand Old Steward Luo. "How can you speak like that? Shut up if you don't know how to speak." Old Steward Luo was a very senior manager in the Qin estate, and the Qin estate's young masters had always held due respect for him. Chapter 4862. Eldest Qin reprimanded him in front of so many people today, which could be considered extremely severe. Old Steward Luo hurriedly cupped his hands in apology. "Yes, this old servant has overstepped his boundaries. This old servant will go and apologize to Miss Qiao right now." Eldest young Sir Qin coldly glared at him. "No need." Morong Fei quickly followed Arbor into the tent and flicked her sleeve to create a soundproof barrier. "Little junior sister, are you suspecting something? Someone in the troop is experimenting on living people," Arbor resolutely said. "The Fong siblings are the first victims. That Miss Fong should be mutating soon." "What?" Morong Fei's eyes widened in astonishment. "Little junior sister, could it be that Miss Fong, she also drank the mutated medicinal liquid?" Arbor nodded and turned to look at her. "Did you tell your elder brother to pay more attention to his diet recently?" Morong Fei nodded. "I did." Arbor expressionlessly sat down in front of the short table. Holding a white porcelain teacup in one hand, he coldly said, "I can roughly guess." Early the next morning, everyone got out of bed and gathered with panda eyes. The breakfast distributed by the Qin estate was half a steamed bun with some salted vegetables for each person 2 days ago. Today's portion was even less than 2 days ago. They only received about 1/3 of the steamed bun, and there wasn't even any salted vegetables. Everyone looked at each other and silently chewed on the dried steamed bun with plain water. Duo Shanmei and the rest silently put away the steamed bun without eating. In any case, with their cultivation, it wouldn't matter if they didn't eat for a few days. That white steamed bun really didn't look appetizing. Yun Yunji yawned and jogged to Arbor's side. Ignoring Morong Fei's disdainful gaze, he hurriedly whispered, little junior sister, I have some apple soup that I made myself. Do you want a bowl? Arbor glanced at him and reluctantly nodded. Yun Yunji was overjoyed and hurriedly took out an ear cup from his inner world. Taking out 2 small bowls, he very sensibly poured a bowl each for Arbor and Morong Fei. Morong Fei originally didn't want to drink it, but when she saw Arbor drinking it in small sips, she put on a cold face and drank a few mouthfuls. It was still warm, and it tasted sweet and sour. It tasted pretty good. Little junior sister, I have eggs and meat buns here. You should eat some too. Yun Yunji took out a small plate, a few freshly peeled boiled eggs and 5 palm-sized meat buns. Eat well for breakfast. When the secret realm opens, you'll have the strength to compete with others for treasures, Yun Yunji said with a smile. Arbor thought it made sense. He took a meat bun and took 2 bites. Miss Morong, go ahead and eat. Yun Yunji was a very perceptive person. Seeing that his junior sister had a good relationship with this lady from the Morong family, he quickly wanted to build a good relationship with the other party. Shouldn't the trivial matter between the Morong family and the Yun family from 100 years ago have long faded away in their generation? It was so annoying to always remember those grudges and hatred. If there was a grudge, it should be between the ancestors of the Yun family and the Morong family. It really didn't have much to do with them, the younger generation. Humph! Morong Fei threw him a cold glance and raised her hand to take out a boiled egg. The 3 of them sat in front of the tent and ate, attracting many gazes from time to time. A middle-aged woman nibbled on the steamed bun in her hand without tasting anything, but her eyes were fixed on the plate of eggs and meat buns, not moving away. Steward Gu is back. Chapter 4863. Are you alright, Manager Gu? Several fellow workers glanced behind him and inquired quietly, where's Miss? Did they really throw Miss into the sea? In their opinion, this was too cruel. Wasn't throwing a young lady without any cultivation directly into the sea the same as helplessly watching her die? They didn't expect this trip to be so dangerous. All 3 members of the Fong family sigh. What was the use of earning so much money when Master Fong previously opened such a large trading company? It couldn't buy back the lives of their family of 3. Manager Gu's eyes glistened with tears as he shook his head and said in a choked voice, Miss also fell ill. What? Miss almost pounced at me and bit me. If it weren't for the royal guards firmly holding me down, I probably would have been bitten. Eldest sister-in-law Yang and the others' expressions all changed. In the eyes of ordinary people, the greatest characteristic of a zombie mutation was that it would bite people indiscriminately while in a delirious state. As long as one was bitten by a zombie, the zombie poison would mix into another person's body, and that person would also be out of luck. Therefore, zombies weren't actually scary. The scariest thing was that they were contagious. Are you alright, Manager Gu? Several people inquired in whispers with terrified gazes. When 5th young Sir Chin came over with pastries, he saw these people gathered in 2s and 3s, and whispering about something. He didn't pay much attention to them, and walked to Arbor without consulting anyone. With a glance, he saw that the little lady had already eaten her breakfast. Xiao Qiao, why are you so early today? Didn't the little stoic habitually sleep until the end of the morning, or 9 in the morning before waking up? I'm full, the little fellow said expressionlessly. Inexplicably, the zither cultivator read traces of distant alienation in the stoic's eyes. What was going on? She was still fine yesterday, but the little stoic didn't like him early this morning. Young sir, 3 or 4 large ships have arrived at the beach. Many people have disembarked. It seems the news of the opening of the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm has spread throughout the 3 provinces. Eldest young Sir Chin absent-mindedly set down the cup in his hand and stood up to walk outside. Did something special happen today? Yes. 5th young sir delivered breakfast to Miss Chiao today, but he was rejected. The royal guard followed behind the eldest young sir and recounted the details. Eldest young Sir Qin paused in his steps and sighed with a heavy gaze. He reached out and lifted the curtain. The cold wind blew against his face, and his soft hair swayed slightly in the wind. Qin Xian covered his forehead with one hand and narrowed his eyes as he looked into the distance. The dust and sand were blown away by the wind and went straight into people's eyes. The wind seems to be blowing. The guard behind him muttered softly. Qin Xian nodded slowly. It's windy. Patriarch. Patriarch. Mu Lixiang and Mu Yuanyuan were following behind the Mu family's team. When they saw Arbor's figure from afar, they quickly ran toward the camp. When the other members of the Mu family saw this, they quickly followed and formed a circle. They stood beside Arbor and greeted them one by one. Arbor nodded at the crowd in response. Mu Wuxia, that brat, revealed a trace of arrogance on his small round face. He raised his head and shouted, "Although you have already taken over the position of our Mu family's patriarch, but if you want me to acknowledge you, humph, you still need to make some achievements." Mu Jiating said longingly, "What achievements do we still need?" Patriarch is someone who continuously charged to the highest floor of Morning Sun restaurant and can even draw a sacred-grade golden talisman in the air. Chapter 4864. Mu Lixiang nodded with a smile. That's right. Young Master Wuxia, aren't your requirements a bit too high? Could it be that young Master What's has already forgotten the miserable training at home a few days ago? Don't you know who said it? It's this new patriarch. Mu Wuxia grimaced as he grumbled in his heart. Mu Yuanyuan laughed in spite of herself. Aren't you afraid that the patriarch will punish you by doubling your training program? Ah! Mu Wuxia's small round face instantly turned bitter. He hurriedly took 3 steps back and said, Forget it, forget it. It's not like I can't admit you. Arbor glanced at them expressionlessly. Why are you all here? Mu Lixiang's ability to express herself was very strong. She explained the matter clearly in a few words. It turned out that the Divine Continent had received news that the Lotus Sage Realm, in the Pool of Forgetfulness, had opened. Many aristocratic families of various sizes had organized many people to come and investigate. Arbor's brows furrowed almost imperceptibly, as if he smelled a conspiracy. She inexplicably thought of the Phoenix Egg on Seacone Planet, and the experience in the Phoenix Forest, during the Heaven Rankings preliminary round. Tianyun's usual method was to gather the cultivators of various aristocratic families and sects, and then make a move against them. Don't let your guard down. Be ready to fight at any time, Arbor said to them. He turned to see Duan Tianya of the Duan clan, Do Fengmian, Do Fengqi, and the others of the Do clan. He had met the elite disciples of the aristocratic families before, so he was more or less familiar with them. Arbor glanced at them and then looked away. He said to Mu Lixiang and the others, Go set up camp first. Be careful at night. This camp isn't peaceful either. Mu Lixiang and the others nodded repeatedly. Arbor saw that they were about to turn and leave, but he still said, Someone turned into a corpse in the camp yesterday. Everyone's expression changed slightly. Come to me after setting up camp. I estimate that the entrance to the Lotus Sage Realm will open in the next 2 days. There were soundproof barriers and defensive barriers set up outside. If someone tried to eavesdrop through the barriers, Arbor and the others would immediately notice. At this time, Sir Jojo's tent was filled with more than 20 disciples of the Mu family. Yun Yunji and the 3 Morong siblings were also gathered there. I wonder what kind of situation this Pond Lotus Sage Realm is, Arbor said indifferently, his fingertips lightly touching the table. After we enter the secret realm, we will immediately separate from them. Arbor took out a set of teleportation array glyphs. However, I don't know how the teleportation in the secret realm will be like. When the time comes, you must follow me closely. I will activate the teleportation as soon as possible. Everyone, activate your defensive barriers and put on your spiritual or divine armors. You must be careful. Because he didn't know what was going on, he didn't know where he would be teleported to. If he ended up in the cave of some ferocious beast, it would be a bloody battle. Of course, based on her past experience, the little crown princess believed that she wouldn't be so unlucky. All right, Mu Lixiang and the others quickly nodded. They already knew what kind of person this young patriarch was from their previous series of contacts. He was a man of his word, but at least the young patriarch was absolutely reliable. Mu Rongfei's heart suddenly jumped. Jojo, what are you suspecting? Can you tell us? There is definitely something wrong with the Qin family, Arbor said coldly. Chapter 4865. Inside the Dou family tent. Younger sister, don't you feel that the atmosphere in this camp is a bit strange? It gives people the feeling that everyone is doing their own thing. The person who spoke had dark skin and a tall and sturdy body. Even though he lowered his voice to speak, his volume was still not soft. Sitting opposite him was a woman, who looked to be about 25 or 26 years old. She had delicate features, and a pair of fox-like eyes that shone with a shrewd light. Eldest brother, we weren't originally from the same team. We just happened to be on this island waiting for the mystic realm to open. Younger sister, you're right. Eldest brother, you have to work harder this time. Look at these days. The limelight of our main family disciples has all been snatched away by those branch family disciples. Dou Xinwu pursed her lips and said indignantly, this time, we must find this 9-colored sacred lotus when we enter the pond lotus sacred realm. After taking this sacred medicine, no matter how bad it is, it can still raise one's cultivation by a large realm. If it can achieve the expected effect of cultivating 100 times faster within a year, that would be even better. That's just a legend. Dou Tingqi said woodenly and couldn't help but raise his hand to scratch his head. He didn't have much luck in his life. If he really could find the 9-colored sacred lotus, he would have to worry if it was the final radiance of the setting sun. Eldest brother. Dou Xinwu jumped up from the stool and patted her brother's shoulder. How can you be so unambitious? You have to have confidence in yourself. Could it be that we, brother and sister, can't compare to those minor branch family disciples who came up from Sikong planet? Dou Xinwu pursed her lips. Those disciples in the family are all snobs. Seeing Dou Fengmian and Dou Fenghua's medical skills, they all come up to look at them and call them second young master or eldest young master. I don't want to hear it. Dou Tingqi laughed foolishly. But father also said that their aptitudes are indeed the best in the family. So what if they are the best? Didn't they come from a small and shabby starfield like Sikong planet? If it wasn't for our Dou family's nurturing, would they be where they are today? They don't know how to be grateful at all, and still want to fight with eldest brother for the family head position. Dou Tingqi hurriedly waved his hand. Little sister, father also said that I am not suitable to be the patriarch. Big brother, you're really useless. Dou Xianwu angrily slapped the table. If I say you can, then you can. In short, this time in the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm, us siblings will definitely make the entire clan look at us in a new light. Kuei, mother still has half a steamed bun here. Eat it first. Mother, Kuei isn't hungry. The little boy's eyes stared straight at the half-eaten steamed bun in his mother's hand. He swallowed his saliva, but still shook his head firmly. Silly child, you're still growing. Come eat it. Eldest sister-in-law Yang used her sleeve to wipe the corners of her eyes when her son wasn't paying attention. Her child had followed him all the way to escape. She didn't know how much hardship he had suffered. Every time, he was starving and cold. As a mother, she was useless. Originally, she had heard from the people in the village that the Wangchuan Sea was much more peaceful than the land. There were not as many zombies roaming around. She had thought that once she had gathered enough money, she would take her son to the sea and find a peaceful place to settle down. Who knew man proposes, God disposes? Arbor sat in his own tent and used his demonic pupils to observe more than 10 tents in succession. He didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Chapter 4866. She silently waved her hand to smooth out the halo from her demonic pupils and pondered silently for a long time. In the evening, it started drizzling on the island, and it continued to drizzle. The people who were preparing to start a fire outside to cook soup were also drenched by the rain and returned to their tents. The food that the Qin estate could distribute was dwindling. It was probably because their resources were limited, so they had to ensure that their own people were full first. After Arbor learned of this situation, He straightforwardly took out some rations from his storage talisman and had people distribute them to eldest sister-in-law Yang and her children, hoping that they wouldn't have to eat weeds. However, before long, the two Qin estate guards who delivered the rations came running back furiously, with red palm prints on their faces. Arbor couldn't help but be taken aback. After interacting with them these past few days, he knew that eldest sister-in-law Yang and the other women were all gentle and tactful people. How could they possibly attack the Qin estate's guards? "Miss, please go out and take a look. The people who are snatching the rations are red-eyed." The little stoic was just about to go out when she saw the door curtain lift, and eldest young Sir Qin strode inside. He couldn't resist sighing when he saw her. "Jojo, did you give them the rations?" Arbor nodded in confusion. "What is it? You don't know?" When the Dou clan, Duan clan, and several other patrician families passed by the seaside village, they saved several hundred fishermen. They brought them along with them. Due to the lack of resources, many fishermen have been hungry for a day or two. Eldest young Sir Qin said helplessly. "You suddenly gave eldest sister-in-law Yang and the others so much rations, so of course they would be envious. There are people who dare to snatch the things I give." The little crown princess's tone was extremely icy. "Since ancient times, no one has been able to snatch from me, Arbor." Eldest young Sir Qin was most aware of her protective nature. After interacting with them these past few days, the little stoic had clearly classified eldest sister-in-law Yang and the other women and children into her protective category. Moreover, with the little stoic's stubborn and soft-hearted personality, if she knew that so many refugees had come to the island, she would definitely generously donate without hesitation. But now, the bad thing was that this bunch of stupid fishermen actually tried to snatch the rations from eldest sister-in-law Yang and the other women. Not only did he beat up the guards, he also injured eldest sister-in-law Yang and the other commoners. Arbor held up an oil paper umbrella and walked out of the tent. He saw the messy group of people not far away. Her eyes were emotionless as she stared at him coldly for a long time. Others didn't know what she was thinking, but she was the only one who knew. Arbor seemed to have seen his past life. When she and Captain Gao's training team went out on missions, they not only had to be wary of the mutant creatures that appeared from time to time, but they also had to be wary of people, the unpredictable human heart. "Jojo." Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist calling out to her softly when he saw her standing there in a daze for a long time. Arbor came back to his senses and said expressionlessly, "Separate these people." When the Qin estate's guards received the eldest young master's instructions, they stepped forward and rudely pulled away the fishermen who were rolling in the mud. Some of the more vicious ones threw a few punches at them and knocked them to the ground. It wasn't like they couldn't beat these aggressive fishermen. It was just that they couldn't make a move without the young master's orders. The Qin estate's guards brought the chaotic scene under control within a few minutes. They shoved the fishermen who were the most aggressive in snatching the rations forward and shouted, "Behave yourselves." One of the fishermen with an extremely sturdy body bellowed, "What are you doing?" Chapter 4867. Bam Bam. The Qin estate's guards bluntly knocked that person to the ground with 2 punches. The Qin estate's guards are so impressive. Dou Xinwu couldn't resist mocking them when she heard the commotion, and just happened to see this scene. What kind of ability was beating up a few fishermen without any cultivation? Eldest young Sir Qin indifferently swept this Miss Dou a glance. "Miss Dou, saving people is indeed a meritorious deed, but since you saved them, it's best to manage them well. Don't let them casually come out and bite people like rabid dogs." "Who are you calling rabid dogs?" Dou Xinwu couldn't help but glare angrily at the eldest young sir when she heard the contempt and mockery in his words. "Whoever steals the grain is a rabid dog." Ling Ge harumphed and flung her torn sleeve to the ground. When the group of people surged over just now, it gave him a fright. Ling Ge did her best to protect the 5 young masters as they retreated, but who knew that the crowd would surge over and squeeze them in the center, making it impossible for them to leave. Dou Xinwu gritted her teeth and glared at Ling Ge before turning to look at the leading fisherman. "You stole the grain." The fishermen pursed their lips, and one of them braced himself to quibble. "Eldest, we're all from the same camp. Do those women need so much grain? It's human nature to share some with us, right? Bah! A shrewish woman scuttled out from eldest sister-in-law Yang's side and scolded with reddened eyes. You only want a little? You've taken all the food away. Even when eldest sister-in-law Yang said to leave some for Coeur, this child, you weren't willing. A bunch of immoral bandits still have the face to quibble here? Arbor glanced coldly at Do Xinwu and company. After you're done being the Virgin Mary and erecting a memorial arch, you leave people there without a care. These people are now coming out to steal the grain like rabid dogs, but you actually turn a blind eye to it. Don't wear such a big hat if you don't have such a big head. Holy light isn't so easy to illuminate. The little stoic's rebuke made Do Xinwu and company flush red in the face. Without enough wealth, power, how could you illuminate the world with bullshit? How can you speak like that, miss? Do Xinwu couldn't help but be anxious. What you mean is that we should just leave those fishermen in distress on the beach alone. Did he not care about their lives? You're too cruel. The fisherman immediately looked at Arbor with condemning gazes, as if the little stoic had done something heinous. Arbor looked at her expressionlessly, a hint of sarcasm in the corner of his mouth. You overestimate yourself. Do Xinwu's eyes widened in anger. Just as she was about to refute, she suddenly heard a frightened cry from behind the crowd. Everyone retreated in all directions, leaving only the two siblings, Do Xinwu and Do Tingqi, who turned around in a daze and met a pair of dark eyes. That person was originally squatting on top of a person, biting that person's arm with all his might. At this moment, he looked towards them with a trace of dark red blood hanging from the corner of his mouth. Do Xinwu immediately let out an earth-shattering scream, as she quickly hid behind her brother. That zombie's movements were extremely swift and ferocious, and it pounced in front of Do Tingqi. Do Tingqi almost collapsed on his butt. He was so frightened that he hastily kicked his legs and retreated several steps. That zombie's movements were extremely fast. With a strange wah, it suddenly jumped like a frog and opened its ghastly fangs to bite Do Tingqi's arm. Do Tingqi threw a punch in his panic. Chapter 4868. The fist wind landed on the zombie's head with a bang, but it only caused the zombie to slowly shake its head. There was nothing unusual about it. At this moment, someone in the crowd cried out involuntarily, "Isn't this Manager Gu? Manager Gu has also mutated." Gu Dazhong was squatting on the ground, his eyes bloodshot as he stared coldly at Do Tingqi. Do Tingqi was about to pee his pants from his stare. He cursed in his heart. You old fart. Can't you find someone else to stare at? Gu Dazhong roared and abruptly jumped up. Everyone instantly discovered that Manager Gu's jumping ability was too good. With just a light jump, he was already more than a dozen meters in the air. When he swooped down to pounce on Do Tingqi, his head was suddenly pierced by a black gold arrow, and he fell heavily to the ground. This Manager Gu's head was pierced by a jet black arrowhead, and his limbs were still swinging nonstop on the ground. However, his entire body was like a frog that had lost its balance, unable to turn over even when facing the sky. Why can this zombie still move its limbs after being shot in the head? An aristocratic family disciple couldn't help but ask in shock. That was because a crystal core was forming in this zombie's head. If it wasn't destroyed, it would never stop moving. As he spoke, Arbor released a blue spiritual fire from his fingertip, which landed on Manager Gu's head. The fire quickly spread to Steward Gu's body, completely burning him into ashes. Look, why is there a strong beam of light shining over there? Just as one person finished speaking, another aristocratic family disciple couldn't help but exclaim, "It's the mystic realm. The mystic realm is open." What, the Lotus Pond sacred realm is open? That beam of light. Arbor's expression changed, and he turned to eldest young Master Qin and said, "Quickly send these ordinary people out." Eldest young Master Qin nodded hastily, but it was already too late when the light of transportation appeared. When the entire Lotus Pond Island was enveloped by this beam of light, everyone felt a burst of comfort throughout their bodies. It was as if they were floating in the air. In a flash, everyone in the campsite ran out of their tents and was instantly transported out after being enveloped by the light of transportation. The cultivators were thinking, "Oh no, So many people are going to the secret realm this time. I don't know if I can successfully get the treasure I want. Sister-in-law Yang and the fishermen were praying in the depths of their hearts, praying that the heavens would hear their voices and send them out of this place. As the light and shadow flickered, Arbor's vision was suddenly replaced by a scene of fragrant grass and butterflies filling the sky. There was no more sand in front of him. Instead, it was replaced by a small and quiet bamboo forest. The three siblings, Morong Fei and Morong Yen, as well as more than 20 people from the Mu family, were all teleported here. Soon after, the young masters of the Qin estate, the Duan clan, the Dou clan, and the other aristocratic clans were also teleported to this bamboo forest. Everyone looked at each other. Arbor's reaction speed was absolutely swift, as he directly took out a set of teleportation talismans. As eldest young Master Qin called out Jojo, in astonishment, bringing Morong Yin Yunji, and the group of people from the Mu family, they teleported away with a so sound. The 5 young masters widened their eyes in sadness. Is Jojo looking down on us? South light flashed, and Sir Jojo appeared beside them again with a group of people. Everyone. Without another word, Arbor activated the teleportation talisman formation again. Chapter 4869. Whoosh! The group was instantly teleported away, and they teleported away again without hesitation. Everyone looked at each other in bewilderment. At the beginning, they might have thought that the little stoic's hand shook and opened the wrong teleportation talisman. But now, they were completely certain that this little fellow did it on purpose. She purposely teleported away to get away from them. Eldest young Sir Qin's eyes flickered, and his lips curled into a faintly discernible smile. He couldn't help but sigh softly in his mind. This imp was always so sharp. He really didn't know what to say. Or perhaps, from the very beginning, the little girl had always been wary of them. Swish! The little stoic and her group appeared expressionlessly beside the Qin estate's young masters again. Second Qin's eyes were sharp and his hands deft, and he was just about to grab this stoic face. However, this imp teleported away again with the group after 7 or 8 times in a row. Although the little stoic's expression didn't change, she was evidently having a mental breakdown on the inside. Moreover, Yun Yunji and the others behind her had strange expressions. If they didn't want to leave this place, as if they were fleeing for their lives, Yun Yunji and the others really couldn't resist bursting into laughter, because they teleported several times in a row. Arbor and his group had messy hairstyles that couldn't be blown away by the wind. It was a bit indescribable. Everyone. Cough, Jojo. Swish. Swish, swish, swish. Swish. After 18 teleportations, Arbor brought everyone back to their original location and said expressionlessly, "This place is surrounded by a bamboo forest. There's a lake ahead. Apart from this, the terrain is more or less the same as here. It's easy to get lost, so we have to be careful when we walk. Everyone. Don't think that we won't know that you wanted to sneak away back then just because you kept a straight face, and explain the situation here. Look at the hairstyles of those people behind you each, and every one of them had that crooked expression. Don't you think you're hilarious?" Eldest young Sir Qin restrained himself, and pursed his lips into a smile. "Alright then, let's set off. Pay attention to the surroundings and don't get lost." Arbor nodded solemnly. He couldn't help but grumble inwardly. They couldn't teleport in this godforsaken mystic realm. This mystic realm probably had a fixed teleportation entrance. No matter how many times he was teleported within the Pool Lotus Sacred Realm, he would always be teleported back to the entrance. How could there be such a ridiculous mystic realm in this world? This is simply infuriating. The little stoic's face was taut as she strode forward. Didn't the 5 great clans send people to guard this place? Where are they? Gathering all 5 keys didn't seem to be of any use. If this wasn't cheating, then what was? Who knew how many people had been cheated by this mystic realm since ancient times? Everyone knew that this little girl was very depressed, so they didn't say anything and hurriedly followed her footsteps. Yun Yunji and the others inexplicably had an intense desire to survive. If they dared to laugh out loud at this time, the little stoic would definitely kick them out of the team in a fit of anger, absolutely not showing any mercy. Morong Fei said weakly. This place is still the outer area of the mystic realm. Logically speaking, we have to walk further in before we can see them. Xiao Mu was involuntarily taken aback when she heard this. From Morong Fei's words, the guards of the 5 great clans were stationed at the outer area of the secret territory all year round? Wouldn't that be equivalent to being sealed in this secret realm for who knows how many years? Wasn't life simply too boring? What fun could there be in guarding the mystic realm all day long? Chapter 4870. Morong Fei saw her strange expression and knew that she had misunderstood. She hurriedly said, "Little junior sister, this mystic realm opens about once every 3 years. Every time it opens, the passageway will open. We basically rotate the guardians every 2 years. That was about 5 to 6 years. At that time the guardians would change." Arbor made an "oh" sound, showing a "I'm not interested in the arrangements of the 5 great aristocratic families" look. Morong Fei coughed lightly and said, "There won't be any problems in the outer area. Speaking of which, only by entering the sacred door opened by the gilded copper key can we be considered to have truly entered the interior of the mystic realm." Arbor! Exclamation point. Then why didn't you say so earlier, causing her to anxiously reveal her plan, and let eldest Qin and the rest know that she wanted to escape? Damn, eldest young master said with a smile. Usually in those ancient natural mystic realms, there are transportation restrictions and many other restrictions as well. It's not as loose as in Senior's inheritance mystic realm. Arbor's little face was cold as he glanced sideways at eldest young master. Without a word he turned and left. Didn't he mean that even if everyone entered the sacred door opened by the gilded copper key, he might not be able to escape? Who would believe that? When they reached the inside, Sir Jojo would still escape. Everyone walked around this bamboo forest for an unknown period of time. A disciple from a small aristocratic family couldn't help but ask softly, "Where will the rest of the people go?" When they were at the campsite, the Pond Lotus sacred realm suddenly opened, and the light of transportation enveloped everyone. In theory, including the old, weak, women and children, there were about 1,000 people in their group who were transported into the mystic realm. However, the strange thing was that after walking around in this bamboo forest for about an hour, they still didn't see anyone else. Arbor muttered in his heart. Most of the people were ordinary commoners without cultivation. If possible, it was best to be transported out as soon as possible. "I know this place. It's not far ahead." Morong Zhao hurriedly quickened his steps, turning back from time to time to urge his brother and sister. "If we continue forward, we will see the guards of the 5 great aristocratic families." Morong Zhao suddenly stopped. He was walking at the very front, so when he stopped, everyone else naturally stopped as well. Everyone glanced over, and couldn't help but feel slightly surprised. Dozens of corpses were strewn all over the ground, covering the path leading to the Saint Gate. The faces of these corpses had long been blurred, and their bodies had been dried by the wind. They looked like they had been dead for many years. What's going on? Morong Fei's heart tightened, as she quickly followed her 2 brothers to check on the disciples of the Morong family. However, there was no way to find out anything. These corpses were basically skeletons, and the clothes on their bodies were tattered beyond recognition. Morong Fei and the others were barely able to recognize the 10 or so disciples from the badges on their waists. The 3 siblings' faces turned grave for a moment. All the disciples sent to guard the Pond Lotus sacred grounds had mysteriously died at the Holy Gate's entrance? What did this mean? A long time ago, someone had injured the guards and opened the door without permission? What's going on? Morong Yin frowned and muttered to himself. Could it be that another elder of the Wangchuan Duo clan has barged into this holy gate? Duo Shanmei had been hiding at the back like a quiet little quail. Now that they heard Morong Shi slandering their family, they were unable to hold themselves back. Chapter 4871. Duo Shanmei jumped up and shouted, "Young Master Morong, don't accuse people unjustly, okay?" Seeing Morong Yin looking over, Duo Shanmei couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt. Yes. A year ago, There was an elder of my clan, who was hot-headed and foolish enough to barge into the depths of the Pond Lotus sacred land. But didn't he already realize his mistake? Moreover, he was punished by the sacred realm, and never came out again, right? Ha! Morongfei couldn't resist snickering. You think he didn't want to come out? He just didn't have the ability to continue coming out to cause trouble. Morongyan also nodded and said, it was precisely because of him that the path behind the Pool Lotus Sacred Realm's sacred gate was sealed at that time. Even at this time, it might not have been unsealed. It was unsealed. Young Master Omega Kotoka coldly interjected, and lightly pushed out his left palm. As the energy ripples soundlessly spread out in the air, 2 thick scarlet gilded copper doors opened in response. Endless white fog emerged from inside, and swept towards everyone outside the door. Jojo, it looks like the 5 gilded copper keys I gave you before are useless now, eldest young Master Qin whispered with a chuckle. This sacred gate could be opened with a push, so what kind of keys were needed? It was a waste of all the effort. He put in earlier arbor, took out 5 gilded copper keys from his pocket, and looked at them pensively before suddenly throwing them out. The 5 gold-plated copper keys formed a circle before abruptly coming together to form a copper key in midair, which then landed in Xiaomu's hand. The little stoic put the copper key into her pocket with a cold expression, and didn't say anything. When everyone saw that she didn't say anything, they felt like their hearts were scratching their lungs, and wanted to ask. Arbor led the group of Mu family members through the pile of corpses first, revealing a grave expression. After getting closer and observing, Arbor discovered that the bones and tendons of these people on the ground had been broken inch by an unknown person, and they died very cleanly. In other words, when they fought back then, it was practically a single exchange, and these people on the ground were killed by that opponent with a single strike. Everyone followed the flowing fog and stepped into the holy gate. In an instant, their eyes were immersed in a vast expanse of fog, and they couldn't see the people and objects around them clearly. Several screams came from beside him. The disciples of the aristocratic families immediately held their swords in front of their chests in panic, and cried out in fear. There's an ambush here. Something dragged them away. Huala, after several sounds of water. Morongfei hurriedly opened her spiritual consciousness and looked around. It would have been better if he didn't take a look, but when he did he was shocked. It turned out that they were walking on a path paved with stones, which was only about a meter wide. On both sides of the path, there were dark and bottomless pools. From time to time, a giant tail would emerge from the deep pool and sweep up a man, dragging him into the depths of the pool. This giant tail appeared in the left side of the pool for a while, and then came out from the right side of the pool in the next. Everyone hastily ran forward together. Unexpectedly, the running crowd seemed to have angered this ferocious beast, and icy-cold pool water splashed down on everyone's heads. A head the size of a millstone emerged from the pool, and its small eyes stared eerily at everyone. A long giant tail with countless barbs rolled out and swatted at the people on the shore. Someone screamed, "Sacred Beast Ichthyosaur." Chapter 4872. Someone immediately cried out in alarm, "The sacred beast dragonfish. It's the sacred beast, the sacred beast." As if responding to everyone's panic, the giant long tail that rose from the deep pool smashed towards the stone path in the middle with a series of splashes. Boom! The huge tremors seemed to have smashed into everyone's hearts, causing them to jump heavily. Most of the cultivators looked back and forth in panic, and a trace of fear surfaced in their eyes. Not good. The sacred beast wants to smash this path. If everyone fell into the deep pool, then they would absolutely become a delicious meal for the sacred beast. While everyone was shouting like headless flies, the little stoic had already dashed forward, leading Yin Yunji, Morong Yen, and the Mu family members in a mad dash forward. Shout, shout, shout. If shouting blindly was useful, then the sacred beast wouldn't chase after them. The stone path they were on now was the only path that led forward. What the hell were they shouting for instead of running there? When the others saw the little stoics group dashing forward quickly, they immediately understood. If they didn't run now, when would they? If one were to look down from the sky, they would be able to see that between the two dark pools, there was a narrow stone path that led straight to the front. Over 100 cultivators hurriedly dashed forward, as if they were running for their lives. Someone ran in a hurry, and his figure flitted across the sky. However, in less than a second, his feet were pulled down to the ground, and he still stepped heavily onto the stone path. Flight was prohibited. This thought flashed through everyone's minds, and their hearts abruptly sank. One person tried again with a fluke mentality, but when his feet were only half a foot off the ground, he was slapped to the ground by a heavy force. He abruptly fell forward and rolled several times, before crashing into a female cultivator. The two of them screamed and rolled into a ball. Just as they were about to fall into the deep pool together, a leg suddenly stretched out from the side and kicked them hard. This helped them stabilize their bodies. This dear friend broke out in a cold sweat. When he looked up, he saw Duo Shanmei looking at him with her arms crossed. Don't be so reckless. Not only did this dear friend almost kill her just now, he also dragged down the female cultivator next to her in passing. Sorry. That person repeatedly apologized, and hurriedly helped up the female cultivator, who was rolling on the ground. As he spoke, a muffled sound came from the cobblestone road under their feet. It was unknown when the dragonfish's tail had curled up on the road. A small Xiozha running at the very back was blocked by the ichthyosaur's enormous tail. He immediately found it difficult to move forward, and his face instantly turned pale. Save me. That guy's face was pale, his legs were trembling, and he couldn't help but tremble. The clansmen of the Duo clan looked back with sympathy in their eyes. Life is so fragile. In the blink of an eye, the ichthyosaur's tail, which was hundreds of feet long, suddenly swept towards the cultivator. Everyone hurriedly looked back, and saw the barbs on the dragonfish's tail had pierced into the Xiozha's body. In merely a few seconds, the cultivator was shredded into pieces. Not even a scrap of bone was left. All of them took a deep breath, and they didn't dare turn around and get distracted as they dashed forward madly along with the crowd. Then, he heard a series of cracking sounds coming from behind him. A wave of panic spread through everyone's hearts, and they hurriedly increased their speed. In a race of speed like this, no one would joke around with their own life. Chapter 4873. That was definitely a speed talisman. Using the speed talisman and acceleration medicinal liquid, taking the acceleration medicinal liquid would allow him to run as fast as he could. He would run as straight as the wind, hating his parents for not giving him 2 more legs. Just as their hearts were about to jump out of their chests, the little stoics suddenly turned around and leaped up. Everyone. Where were they? What was happening now? Why did they see the little stoic fly up and even run back? Illusion. This must be an illusion. Little stoic, come back. Jojo, what are you doing? Before Morong Fei could finish muttering, she saw the little stoic swiftly fling out a storage talisman and pulling out an oversized gold club from it. Her small face was stern as she glared angrily at the pursuing sacred ichthyosaur's huge tail. Without a second word, she smashed it down with a boom. After a deafening crash, everyone's pupils contracted. They clearly saw several barbs on the ichthyosaur's tail break from the little stoic's smash. However, it only broke a few barbs and didn't cause any substantial damage to its tail. Even so, the little stoic's provocative action still infuriated the ichthyosaur. After a furious roar, this ichthyosaur bore out from the depths of the pond with its catfish head. It spat out a string of bubbles from its wide mouth, and its 2 long whiskers flew up, looking like it was blowing its whiskers and glaring. Arrogant human. Mommy, it spoke. A cultivator's mind went blank, and she suddenly screamed. Everyone turned to look at her, and they all looked like they had been struck by lightning. Please, it was a sacred beast, okay? Let alone speaking, it wasn't impossible for it to even transform into a human form. This was probably the first time this female cultivator saw a sacred beast, so she blurted out this sentence in a moment of nervousness. She blushed a bit when she thought about it, and hastily smiled sheepishly. I forgot. Being able to remain calm with such a large fish-head sacred beast looming in front of everyone was enough to prove that she was used to grand spectacles. After Arbor smashed down several times with his club, he looked back at the stupefied crowd and couldn't resist roaring. Are you stupid? Why didn't you continue running? You all want to keep them as desserts. That female cultivator was an extremely emotional person, and her eyes turned red on the spot. Miss Chiao is really a good person. We must not let her sacrifice down. Let's go. Jojo-sama, who had somehow been given the good guy card, looked back with a puzzled expression. A group of people who are in the way. Hurry up and go away. If he stayed behind her, she wouldn't be able to fight freely. The little stoic rubbed her stomach and muttered in her heart. Child, watch mother take care of this big-headed catfish that scared you. I'll pluck out its whiskers and have your father make the god-binding silk. The god-binding silk, made from the sacred beast's beard, was definitely better than the spirit-binding rope. It shouldn't be bad to use it as a toy for a doll. A ruthless glint flashed across Xiaomu's eyes. Consider yourself unlucky to have met this Lord Xiao. You've been lurking in this place, for who knows how many people you've eaten. Now that you've been killed by me, it's an eye for an eye. Humans kill beasts and beasts eat humans. The law of the jungle has never changed since time immemorial. Arbor waved his hand, and over 100 blue talismans flew out, forming a binding talisman matrix that trapped the fish dragon inside. The second young master and the others flew forward, their expressions a bit dazed. Jojo, what are you doing? Shouldn't he stay away from this sacred beast under normal circumstances? Chapter 4874. Arbor glanced at them. Of course, we're going to beat it to death, and then divide its flesh and crystal core. All these years, it has eaten many cultivators and replenished a lot of spiritual energy. It's time to pay the price, Arbor said aloofly. Also, we can't pass if we don't beat it to death. Everyone from the Qin estate looked at her in bewilderment. You said you're going to beat this intelligent sacred beast to death on the spot? Did you consider the sacred beast's psychological trauma before saying that? Arbor clearly did not consider that. Right now, there was only one thought throbbing in her mind. Kill this sacred beast and extract its crystal core to nourish the cute little puppy. Whether the cute little puppy could recover, and Morong Sun's hope of waking up all depended on it. So, how could she let this sacred beast go? Why did we come to the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm? Arbor asked coldly, his expression still unchanging. Didn't we come for the treasures here? The supreme treasure is right in front of you. Why aren't you going to take it? This sacred beast is good stuff from head to toe. I only want the crystal core. I can give you the rest. The Omega Kotoku young sir only felt that the little hoodwinker in front of him was a bit dazzling. When she expressionlessly tricked people, it really felt like she was hitting their hearts. Some people from the Qin estate were already convinced by Arbor, and frequently looked at the second young sir. The second young sir smiled faintly. Jojo, if you want the crystal core, then I'll give it to you. You're smart. Arbor snorted and moved his fingers, swiftly activating a binding talisman matrix. Reckless humans. The big-headed catfish snorted coldly. Do you think you weak and puny humans, with low cultivation, can do anything to me? Today, I'll let you experience a sacred beast's clang. Arbor leaped up while it was spouting nonsense and swooped down, smashing his club on its head. Although the big-headed catfish didn't feel any pain, it was still on fire. He opened his wide mouth and sprayed out a stream of water in the shape of an arrow, shooting straight at the little stoic's face, bludgeoning the fish head. The little stoic shouted angrily and flew down, smashing the fish's head several times in a row with bind, thud, thud, thud. The corners of eldest young Sir Qin's eyes couldn't help twitching. He had just led a group of people to evacuate, and when he turned back, he happened to see such a strange scene. The little stoic covered herself in an eggshell and raised the club in her hand high up, fiercely knocking on the catfish's head. Her speed was so fast that it dazzled the eyes. Hit the fish head with a stick. 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 Chop the fish head with hot peppers. After a round of smashing, Arbor retracted his chi and returned to his fist. He placed his small hands beside his body and let out a long sigh. Huh, what did he say just now? Looking at the giant catfish head in front of him, the originally flat fish head had become even flatter after being beaten up by Sir Jojo. Most importantly, the 2 long whiskers on his lower jaw were actually pulled out by this little bastard. Fuck. Everyone silently ridiculed in their hearts. The little stoic's ruthlessness and viciousness were simply unparalleled. Weren't you hitting the fish head with a stick the whole time? Why did you end up plucking its whiskers? Aren't you leaving a bit of face for the sacred beast? Let alone a sacred beast. Even a tiny spiritual beast absolutely couldn't take it lying down after being crushed and humiliated like this. Chapter 4875. If they wanted to fight, they had to fight. How could a holy beast's dignity tolerate such provocation? The dizzy and disoriented holy beast, the ichthyosaur, huffed and puffed, and its small eyes emitted a harsh light of fury. This damn little human actually dared to humiliate this holy beast like this. Now, I'll let you have a taste of a holy beast's true might. This big-headed catfish lifted its gigantic tail out of the deep pool, and the barbs on its tail suddenly flew out one by one. Each barb was like a sharp arrow, carrying an unparalleled holy power pressure, as it uniformly shot toward the little stoic's body. This attack was too powerful, and the little stoic knew she couldn't withstand it at all. No matter how sturdy her eggshell defensive barrier was, it could only block this holy beast's attacks at most 3 times. Moreover, every time she blocked to the limit, it would wear down this eggshell on her body. She quite liked this eggshell now, and didn't want it to be scrapped at this critical juncture. Young Master Omega Kotoka coldly shouted, "Purple firmament," and an intense aura immediately descended from the sky. The gigantic dragon smashed into the cobblestone road with a bang, smashing open another huge hole in the road that was already torn apart by the ichthyosaur. Stone powder rustled and rolled down, sprinkling into the deep pool below. Arbor instantly flew into the air, and expressionlessly looked down at everyone below. Everyone. It wasn't a misconception, it really wasn't a misconception. Just now, they were still wondering how the little stoic could fly around in the air for so long. She had paused in midair more than once when the club struck the fish head. As it turned out, this fellow really could fly in a domain that forbade flying? What was going on? Why could this oddball the little stoic fly? Even holy beasts were restricted in this place. Didn't the second young master summon purple firmament and smash it to the ground? What did this mean? Even holy beasts were restricted by the spatial laws here, okay? The little lady actually flew around without any restrictions. Everyone was silently gloomy. If it weren't for the fact that the current situation didn't permit it, they really wanted to go up and ask her how she did it. Arbor used a triple binding talisman matrix to trap that big-headed catfish, and abruptly shot Purple Firmament Thunder Dragon a look. There was only one word in his mind: hurry. The Purple Firmament Thunder Dragon was speechless. What was the meaning of the facial paralysis winking at her? Did she think that with just a glance, others would immediately understand what she meant? Would it kill him to say something? Zishao, Prince Omega Kotoka whispered. Get rid of it. Old Steward Luo smiled like a Mithraea. Young master, be careful. This is a sacred beast, the ichthyosaur. If we infuriate it and make it go berserk, all of us here will have to bear the consequences. No matter how much you look like a dragon, you're still just a fish, Prince Omega Kotoka said lightly. But this ichthyosaur has a powerful aura. Young master shouldn't have asked Zixiao to help at such a time. He didn't know what would happen after that. With the young master's cautious personality, he wouldn't have been so impulsive if it weren't for the facial paralysis. The second young master glanced at him coldly and said in a cold voice, Are you teaching me how to do things? I wouldn't dare. Elder Luo hurriedly bowed and retreated silently. At the same time, Zixiao and that ichthyosaur had already started fighting. There were binding talisman matrices around the big-headed catfish, so the one facing Zixiao would be the one being brutally abused. Before Zixiao appeared, its tail full of barbs still appeared very large and had extremely strong attack power. Chapter 4876. But now, compared to a true dragon sacred beast like Zixiao, the ichthyosaur seemed a bit lacking. The two sacred beasts fought above the deep pool. The ichthyosaur spat out a mist of water and was struck by Zixiao's lightning, creating a streak of lightning in the air. Everyone only saw a streak of lightning flash before their eyes, and they abruptly fell into the deep pool, unable to create a splash. Everyone subconsciously took a step back. The ichthyosaur crashed heavily onto the stone path, its tail leaving a bloody mark. This sacred beast that suddenly appeared in front of it was actually stronger than it. This made it angry, but at the same time, it also felt a little scared. It had occupied this mountain as its king for who knew how many years. The cultivators it had eaten were almost innumerable. When had it ever suffered such a loss at the hands of others? Besides, the ichthyosaur's wide mouth opened and closed as it said angrily, "You and I are of the same kind, so why are you helping a mere human deal with me? If you and I join hands, don't listen to it." Arbor coldly interrupted the ichthyosaur. "This cowardly coward can't beat you. It only wants to stabilize you first, and then attack you ruthlessly when the opportunity arises. If you don't have a brain, you'll fall for its trick." Zishao. These words sounded like a reminder, but why did it sound so unpleasant? What did he mean by he would fall for its trick if he didn't have a brain? The implication was that if he continued to listen to the ichthyosaur, he would be a brainless guy? Zishao, young Master Omega Katoka said coldly. The purple firmament lightning dragon instantly flew into the air. In the next second, it crashed onto the ground with a boom, completely collapsing the stone path on one side. "Idiot!" Arbor cursed inwardly, and threw a flight talisman at it. The purple firmament lightning dragon instantly felt its body lighten, and it abruptly soared into the air. Everyone from the Qin estate finally understood. It turned out that the little lady used a flight talisman. No wonder she could ignore the restrictions here. The Stoic's flight talisman could actually ignore restrictions? Everyone couldn't help but be taken aback. It probably wasn't an exaggeration to say that this little Stoic was the #1 talisman practitioner in the 3 provinces. Zishao rose into the air and rapidly pulled away from the dragonfish. Longtung leaped and spat out several palm-sized lightning bolts. Following a series of rumbling sounds, the ichthyosaur suddenly scuttled down the cobblestone road. Just as he was about to dive into the deep pool to hide, he bumped into a wall. Arbor had already used a defensive talisman to set up a barrier on the surface of the water. How could they allow the ichthyosaur to hide in the water? Thus, the pitiful ichthyosaur met with a tragedy. The moment it turned around and retreated, it was hit in the head by a fist-sized thunderbolt. It immediately fell down and smashed into the wall, making a dull sound. The little Stoic seized the opportunity to dash forward and hit the ichthyosaur's abdomen with the club in her hand. The fish immediately flipped its belly to the sky and rolled on the water barrier with a thud. Omega Katoka leaped forward and slashed the ichthyosaur's abdomen with his sword. The ichthyosaur let out an anthropomorphic scream. You had stared in horror. A round crystal abruptly leaped out from its slashed abdomen. Arbor reached out and sucked this sacred beast crystal into his storage talisman. Then he turned around and fled while shouting, "Run!" Everyone was baffled at first. "Didn't you take the sacred beast crystal? And we'll take the remaining sacred beast bones and blood? We're about to win the battle. Why are we running?" Yet when they turned around, the ichthyosaur's open abdomen started to swell. Fuck, it was going to self-detonate. Chapter 4877. Holy shit, this really was going to self-destruct. Everyone almost pissed their pants in fright. This self-destruction was no joke. Today, it was the self-destruction of a real saint beast. No one could estimate how powerful it would be, and what the result would be. Elder Luo's smiling face instantly froze. "Young master, I'm afraid we can't withstand the self-destruction of this sacred beast." The Omega Katoku young master spat out a word, "Go." The group along with Elder Luo sprinted forward. Elder Luo's fat body nimbly moved forward at an extremely fast speed. "Little girl, we've really been screwed by you this time." Dugaling floated behind the little girl like a spirit and said faintly. The fatty carried her large purple gold melon hammer and followed behind Dugaling with her short and chubby legs. She cursed the entire way. "I just knew that nothing good would come out of meeting this damned girl. Everyone, now you're giving advice after the fact. You didn't say it just now. If you had said it earlier, Maybe we would have been as far away from this damned girl as possible. On the other side, Arbor used a flying glyph. Her speed was very fast as she rushed at the very front. Everyone looked at her back and felt their balls hurt. This damned girl didn't waste any energy. Other than using a flying glyph, she also used a speed glyph. In this way, her speed was even faster than the two young masters of the Qin estate. She really was damned. The few Xiuzha, who were running at the very back, looked back in terror. They only saw a ferocious wave of air surging over and chasing after them. Their hearts almost jumped out of their chests in fear. The self-destruction of a sacred beast was extremely powerful. That wave of air viciously chased after them from behind. It was like a ferocious beast that had taken human form and was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Arbor couldn't help but look back. She saw that under the amiable gray fog, the wave of air had devoured the cobblestone path behind them. Wherever the gray fog swept, the cobblestone path collapsed. Countless stone fragments rustled as they rolled into the deep pool. Several practitioners who were running and turning their heads back stumbled the moment they turned their heads, and stumbled forward a few steps. Seeing that the gray chi wave was about to catch up with them, their faces turned ashen. They all cried out in their hearts, "This is bad." In the blink of an eye, Arbor flicked his finger, and a few streaks of light flashed into their bodies. As soon as the talisman power entered their bodies, the practitioners immediately felt their bodies become lighter. With a slight push, they flew a few meters away. At this time, the wave of air had already caught up to their original position and swallowed up a section of the cobblestone road below. Arbor turned around and continued forward. Not long after, he saw a group of people in front of him. They were like ants on a hot pan, gathered in twos and threes, arguing about something. Heavens, why are you guys still here? A Qin estate's cultivator couldn't help but shout out. Quickly leave. The shockwaves from the Saint Beast's self-destruction were about to reach them. Why were these people standing in the middle of the path? Did they want to die? These people were too funny and laughable. What the hell were they arguing about in this kind of place? When that emotional female cultivator saw Arbor flying over, her eyes couldn't help but brighten. She said with a face full of pleasant surprise, "Your Excellency, you've returned safely." Arbor glanced at her. He felt somewhat baffled. This female cultivator was suddenly so amiable and cordial to him. Why was that? Another male cultivator stepped aside, and Xiaomu caught sight of a large gilded copper door behind them. Chapter 4878. Why is there a door here? Everyone looked up at the large bronze door in bewilderment. They saw that this large bronze door went straight up, connecting to the depths of the dome, as though it was one with the cave walls. Therefore, it was impossible to take a shortcut to cross it unless they opened this folding bronze door. Jojo. Morongfei squeezed through the crowd to stand in front of her. We tried many methods, but we couldn't open this folding bronze door. Everyone, use fire spirit burn and concentrate your divine power to blast it. But it's useless. Therefore, it was useless for them to squeeze here. They still couldn't pass through. Lady Jojo was expressionless. Then you. Alright, how are things on your side? That sacred beast didn't make things difficult for everyone? Morongfei continued to speak, but she stopped abruptly in the middle of her sentence, because she had already seen that the male cultivators flying at the back were being chased by a gray wave of air that stuck to them like a shadow. That wave of air transformed into all kinds of forms, including tigers, wolves, lions, leopards, and so on. When it reached here, the wave of air transformed into a huge bird with enormous wings. It flapped its 100-feet-long wings and roared as it surged toward them. Hurry up and think of a way to open this red bronze door. Eldest young Master Qin roared at the people behind him. Then, he raised his hands and pushed out a surge of sacred power. At the same time, Duguling, Fatty, Fei Zhuang, and the others hurriedly followed, helping eldest young Master Qin set up a large-scale defense to block the huge gray bird that was charging toward them. Boom! Under the impact, the road outside the barrier shattered bit by bit. Now they had no way out. After the destruction along the way, that stone path had long been destroyed. They had no other choice but to continue forward. Hurry up! Eldest young Master Qin's handsome face darkened. revealing traces of anxiety on his face. Lady Jojo's pretty little face was tense. Actually, you guys, hurry, attack it together. Eldest young Master Omega Kotoku led a group of people forward and gathered their strength to blast at the red bronze door. Jojo looked at them speechlessly. I think that actually, everyone, put in more effort. Focus fire, focus fire. A bald middle-aged man raised his arm and roared. Once, twice, countless times. Everyone was so busy that their heads were drenched in cold sweat, and their hands were slightly trembling. Seeing that first young master and the others could not hold on for much longer, the situation was extremely dangerous. The bald uncle squatted on the ground, exhausted. He pounded the ground twice and covered his bald head with a sad face. He wailed, "Are we all going to die here this time?" Actually, Jojo couldn't help but roll his eyes. Heavens, I'm still young and beautiful. I really don't want to die in such a dark cellar. Arbor watched them cry out in sorrow for a long time. One by one, they rushed forward and bombarded the pitiful red bronze door with all their might. There were a few young cultivators whose eyes were red and bulging. It was obvious that they had used too much strength, and their hands were trembling. The little stoic couldn't bear these people's idiocy any longer. The little girl roared angrily. Are you all crazy? This group of people, they are all idiots. Can't they let Lady Qiao Qiao finish her words? Everyone turned to look at her, stupefied. Chapter 4879. This fellow had been watching from the side for half a day, as if she was holding back water, and hadn't stepped forward to help. Everyone didn't chide her because she was young, but it was fine if this fellow didn't help. But why was she making sarcastic remarks from the side? Can you all move aside a bit? Arbor hollered, her stoic face taut like a jade carving. The group of brothers and sisters blocking her way subconsciously took a few steps to the side, opening up a narrow path that only allowed one person to pass. Arbor wore a stinky expression as she pattered past the cultivators on both sides of the path. When she reached the red copper door, she took out a gilded copper key from her sleeve and circled the door. Then, she inserted the key into a relatively hidden keyhole that was so small. Everyone, what happened? Where are we? What we are witnessing with our own eyes shouldn't be the truth, right? When the red copper door creaked open, everyone looked at the little stoic in bewilderment. Fuck, what were you doing earlier? Just when they were about to lose their lives from the bombardment, you freaking leisurely took out a key and opened the door in a matter of minutes? The little stoic's exquisite face was cold as she slowly put the key back into her sleeve. Let's go. Everyone's mind. Everyone's mind. Again, what should I do if I freaking really want to hit her right now? I can't control my own emotions. I want to press her big head into a pool and make her sober up. Young Master Omega Kotoku. Old Manager Luo put on a fake smile. Miss Jojo, isn't your reminder a bit late? Our divine power and spiritual energy are about to be freaking depleted, okay? Couldn't you have warned us earlier? You definitely exhausted us on purpose, right? Arbor glanced coldly at everyone, disinclined to explain too much. On the other hand, Morong Fei hastily said, All right, don't say any more nonsense. Let's go quickly. Don't blame Jojo, we also have our own problems, okay? Jojo opened her mouth several times to warn us, but we kept interrupting her every time she opened her mouth. That's right. The emotional female cultivator hurriedly nodded. I saw that Sir Joe wanted to speak several times, but after we interrupted him, he could only helplessly roll his eyes. Everyone was speechless. Arbor. I don't want to talk to anyone right now. Xiaomu's small face was taut as she strode through the red copper door and shouted, Hurry! Everyone was like a clockwork, hurriedly taking 3 steps in 2, and rushed into the door together. Young master, come in quickly. Old Steward Luo stood at the entrance of the red bronze door. He looked back vigilantly and hurriedly called out to them. Ling, let's go. Eldest young master and Ling looked at each other and nodded. The moment they put down their hands, the two of them quickly retreated to the red bronze door. Without the protection of the few transcendent realm experts, the combined barrier quickly shattered with a crisp sound. Bang! Eldest young master Qin and the others hurriedly pushed the door shut. At this critical moment, they couldn't care less about their image. They just wanted to close the door quickly. However, After the gray wave shattered the barrier, it roared even more ferociously. It transformed into a giant gray bird and quickly moved to the front of the red bronze door, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Chapter 4880. When the red copper door closed until there was only a crack left, the remnant consciousness of the fish dragon rushed to the door with great resentment. The grayish air waves desperately tried to squeeze through the crack in the door. Everyone hurriedly sent out beams of Ling power and Shen power to seal the crack and chase away the remnant consciousness of the fish dragon that had burrowed through the red copper door. Following the sound of the door closing, everyone could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. At the same time, the wisps of mist that had burrowed through the door were eliminated by the xiuzha. The sounds of the outside collapsing and the roars all returned to silence. Everyone looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief. The members of the duo clan fell to the ground and wiped their sweat as they panted. Rest, rest, rest for a while, rest. They had used up a lot of energy to attack the red copper door, and then to deal with the remnant of the fish dragon. They had used up almost all of their Ling power and Shen power. Right now, they were so weak that any one of them could push them to the ground with just the power of a finger. Arbor silently scanned the crowd and tilted her head to think. If I sell spirit herbs for a fee now, wouldn't it seem a bit unkind? If she dared to say that she was selling spirit herbs at a black price now, would she be beaten up immediately? Little Shimmy, how are you? Morong Fei gripped the sword in her hand, her right hand trembling slightly. I'm fine. Arbor glanced at her and took out a bottle of mind recovery medicine from her pocket. Drink 2 mouthfuls, then meditate and adjust your breathing. Morong Fei reached out to take it. Is this recovery medicine? Little Shimmy, then drink first. Arbor said expressionlessly. I didn't use up any energy just now. I don't need to drink medicine. Everyone, was it painful? It was really painful. Why did everyone want to hit her so much when she said this? Then all right. Morong Fei answered dryly. Sitting down, she drank 2 mouthfuls of the medicine and hurriedly closed her eyes to adjust her breathing. The others also took out all kinds of spirit recovery pills, recovery elixirs, and so on from their inner worlds. They swallowed the pills and drank the elixirs as they entered a state of cultivation. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Morong Fei jumped up and said to Arbor in surprise, Junior sister, oh my god, your spirit recovery elixir is really amazing. I drank it for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, and I feel that my god power has recovered by 50%. That's amazing. Morong Fei smiled so widely that her teeth could not be seen. She jumped up and said, I'll send some to my brother to drink. Drink 2 mouthfuls at a time. You don't need more than an hour to adjust your breath, Arbor instructed. All right. At this time, many of the people present also withdrew from their cultivation state. However, the fastest among them had only recovered 20% of their strength. Compared to Morong Fei's speed, it was like heaven and earth. Arbor noticed that there were many pairs of eyes around, and they were all looking in her direction. After considering for a few seconds, seeing that they had worked together to resist the sacred beast, she reluctantly took out a few bottles of spirit recovery elixir from her pocket. She hesitated and said, The market price of this elixir is 100,000 per bottle. You only need to take 2 mouthfuls at a time. You can only take it once in 24 hours. Everyone smiled happily and thanked her profusely. After an hour, everyone had recovered about 60 to 70%. They finally had some confidence in their hearts. Xiaomu took advantage of this time to survey her surroundings. She saw strange peaks and steep cliffs. Chapter 4881. The scenery in front of them actually transformed into stone cliffs and precipitous cliffs. A male cultivator from the Duo clan took a step forward and suddenly felt his body tilt. He cried out in alarm and was about to fall. Duo Shanmei reacted swiftly and flung out a belt to pull him back. The male cultivator's face was ghastly pale as he stammered. Miss Duo. I said don't act rashly. Duo Shanmei also broke out in a cold sweat. Observe the situation before acting. Everyone looked in the direction that the man was falling. They saw that there was clearly a rugged path where he stepped. The male cultivator hastily said, I feel like I'm stepping on air. This path isn't substantial. It must be an illusion. Everyone nodded with a solemn expression. They were currently standing on an oval platform. Looking down, they saw tree roots and stone pillars, supporting the platform they were standing on. Looking ahead, it was hazy and hazy. There were several small paths that led to the strange cliffs ahead. Every winding and rugged path ultimately sank into layers of dense fog, making it impossible to see the path ahead. Which path should we choose? After walking for a while, the little stoic was a bit hungry. She was taking out half a mantu and nibbling on it when she happened to see everyone's gazes simultaneously on her. She instantly felt baffled. She hastily stuffed the half mantu into her small mouth, as if she was protecting her food. She looked at everyone vigilantly. Everyone instantly felt like they were struck by lightning. Please, we don't want to snatch your mantu. Eldest young Sir Chin couldn't resist twitching his eyes. Cultivators wouldn't starve to death, even if they didn't eat for several days. So there really wasn't a need to snatch half a mantu. Morong Fei couldn't resist coughing. Little junior sister, how about you point out a path? Everyone nodded in unison. There were 17 to 18 winding paths in front of them. When they couldn't determine which path to take, everyone inexplicably thought that it would be better to have the stoic woman point out the path. Indeed, the stoic woman was absolutely extraordinarily gifted and top-notch when it came to luck. Seeing everyone's trusting gazes gathered on her, Lady Jojo gave them a strange look. She really didn't understand why these people had so much confidence in her. Even she herself wasn't confident. Arbor glanced at the 17 or 18 roads and pointed to a small road on the left that was overgrown with withered grass. Ashioja looked in puzzlement. The path covered in cobblestones beside this withered grass path seemed to be easier to walk on. Can you tell me why you chose this path? Old Manager Luo asked with a smile. Arbor had already started walking towards the path, his mouth indifferently dropping 2 words: intuition. She felt that there was something waiting for her in front. This feeling grew stronger the further she walked. It was as if something was calling out to her strongly. Xiaomu stepped onto that small path of withered branches and withered leaves, walking forward without any hesitation. The rest of the people hurriedly followed. Elder Steward Luo's eyes flashed, and when he turned to look at eldest young Master Qin, he could only helplessly follow after eldest young Master Qin. Walking on this small path, the dozen or so rugged paths in the surroundings instantly disappeared. This path led straight to the heavily foggy area ahead. It seemed to extend into the depths of the mountain forest. It looked rugged, but when they walked up, they found it was extremely flat. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly followed with light footsteps. Chapter 4882. We can be considered to have entered the depths of the Pond Lotus sacred realm, right? A cultivator asked uncertainly. Definitely. The emotional female cultivator nodded and sighed ruefully. Other than that sacred ichthyosaur beast exceeding our expectations, everything else went smoothly. Everyone nodded in agreement and secretly peeked at the expressionless arbor below. Even if others praised her in front of her, this fellow's emotions didn't fluctuate at all. Looking at her was truly stifling. I wonder if there are still unknown dangers hidden in the depths of the Pond Lotus sacred realm. In short, everyone needs to be careful. If anyone remembers any relevant information, remember to share it with us. Do Xinwu pursed her lips and said, "This isn't only for our teammates but also for our own lives. Don't be like some people, always giving advice after the fact, and only taking out crucial items after watching others work hard for half a day." The little stoic suddenly paused and turned around to glance at her. "You're talking about me?" No, you're talking about me." Do Tingqi hastily waved his hand and pushed his indignant sister behind him. The crown princess, my younger sister. My younger sister is a straightforward person. She doesn't have any bad intentions. Watch your mouth." The little stoic coldly glanced at Do Xinwu. "If you can't control it, I can help you." Do Xinwu jumped in fright from her pitch-black and sinister pupils. She pulled on her older brother Do Tingqi's sleeve and shrunk back. How could this little stoic be so unreasonable? She merely muttered in her heart indignantly, but as a result, she was warned by this stoic with a murderous glare. That gaze was quite hateful. Do Xinwu muttered a few words, but her older brother Do Tingqi tugged at her, so she didn't continue speaking. Everyone followed the rugged path overgrown with withered grass forward, their pace getting faster and faster. Do you guys hear anything? Seems like there is, but also seems like there isn't. Is there wind? I can see the path ahead. That's right, I can see it too. My line of sight seems to have brightened up quite a bit all of a sudden. Someone excitedly called out. Speed up, Morong Fei shouted. She hurriedly took a deep breath and sprinted forward. A bunch of idiots. Just by looking at the bright light. Can't you feel that the little junior sister leading the way is getting faster and faster? Mother! A cry of surprise came from the side. Duo Shanmei turned her head to look, and saw a Xiuzha from a small family tremble and fall down. She couldn't help but follow his gaze. At the bottom of this rugged path overgrown with vegetation, where the light and shadow flickered, a cliff of 10,000 feet appeared. Tongues of fire kept darting up from the bottom of the cliff, burning the withered grass hanging at the bottom of the path. No wonder they felt that their surroundings were much brighter. It turned out that there was a sea of fire below them. Duo Shanmei watched as the cultivator fell, and was swallowed by the sea of fire like a small soybean. Her mind couldn't help but become a little dazed. Her legs trembled slightly, and her body became a little unstable. Miss Duo, don't look down. The Xiuzha behind her hurriedly reached out to support her. Seeing her pale face, he hurriedly said, Don't look down. You'll feel dizzy if you look. Hurry and run. Someone in the group shouted. Everyone's speed immediately rose to a new level. The raging flames at the bottom of the cliff swelled with the wind and shot up high with a whoosh. Chapter 4883. Everyone who was running on the rugged path immediately felt the burning sensation under their feet as they jumped and ran forward. That's not right, Morong Fei cursed in her heart. Why do I feel that ever since we entered this damned mystic realm, we have been running for our lives? Previously, we ran for our lives when we met the ichthyosaur, and escaped when the ichthyosaur self-destructed. Now, the flames came again after running for their lives for so long. It seemed like there was no end to it. Could it be that the owner of the mystic realm was deliberately exhausting their energy? Do Xinwu felt the burning sensation under her feet as she stomped and jumped. Her face twisted as she scolded. What intuition? What a joke. Intuition is to let everyone on this iron plate and become roasted food? Arbor led the way with flying talismans and steadily led the way. Do Xinwu's complaining voice was not soft, and naturally, Arbor heard it all. Arbor did not want to lower himself to her level, and did not intend to pay attention to her at first. Who would have thought that the more she scolded, the more energetic she became, and strongly complained to his big brother Do Tingqi. Xiaomu was truly a bit annoyed from listening, so she suddenly stopped in her tracks. She abruptly turned around and flew to Do Xinwu's front with a whoosh. Do Xinwu's prattling words froze in her throat on the spot, and she dazedly gazed at Xiaomu with a dumbfounded expression. Grand Crown Princess! Do Tingqi was frightened by the sudden appearance of the little crown princess in front of him, and his sister, and almost fell down from the road. So much nonsense. Arbor's finger tapped lightly in the air. Do Xinwu suddenly opened her mouth, and found that she could not spit out a single syllable. There was only a heh-heh sound coming from her throat, like the sound of air passing through. Heh-heh. Do Xinwu reached out and beat her chest as she stared at Arbor in horror. She raised her hand to touch her throat, and once again made two heh-heh sounds. Do Tingqi also panicked and cried out helplessly. Grand Crown Princess, what did you do to my sister? Please be magnanimous and let her go. So noisy. Arbor impatiently glanced at the siblings, turned around, returned to his original position, and continued to rush forward with the flight talisman. Run if you don't want to die. Morong Zhao took a deep breath and sped up to catch up. The group of people behind her didn't have the mood to care about Do Xanwu's gestures. They quickly ran past her, leaving the Do siblings far behind. Do Fenghua looked back at them and said in a deep voice, Hurry up and keep up. This pair of siblings were truly oddballs. Why were they still arguing with the little stoic at a time like this, and refusing to leave? Could it be that they were tired of living? Sister, let's run for our lives first. Of course, Do Shimu wanted to escape as well. At this time, her feet felt like they were being burned by a raging fire. If she didn't run now, it would be too late. Run! It's over, it's over. The stone path beneath my feet doesn't seem to be able to withstand the fire. Someone with sharp nerves seemed to have heard a very slight sound coming from the stone path under their feet. Pai Pa! It's over, it's over, it's over. The road is about to be melted by the fire. The road is going to collapse. Hurry and run. Everyone had a long face, as they secretly ridiculed in their hearts. The little crown princess's bullshit intuition was seriously too deceptive. Her intuition was to bring them back home. Arbor looked back at the sour-faced crowd and said expressionlessly, "Teammate price. A flight talisman for 50,000 spirit coins." Chapter 4884. Buy, I'll buy. Buy, I'll buy 2. Give me 2 flying talismans. I'll give you 3. Can you give me another speed talisman, Crown Princess? Crown Princess, I don't have that much cash. Can you give me an IOU first? The little Crown Princess looked at the man who was about to give her an IOU with an indifferent expression. Her eyes were full of contempt. How can you have the face to ask me for an IOU? Do you think your face is worth 1,000 gold just because you're good-looking? That man rubbed his nose embarrassedly. Then I really don't have that much cash on me. Arbor felt that he had nothing to say to someone who couldn't even take out 50,000 spirit coins in cash. I can use my family's identity tablet to pay you. When the time comes, you just have to send a servant to my house and use the tablet to exchange for 10,000 spirit coins. Even if you want to spend so much effort, I'm too lazy to cooperate with you. Arbor glanced at him. I'm selling it at a teammate's price. The market price isn't 50,000 spirit coins. You have to be clear about this. How much? 500,000. Arbor raised his hand and received the identity tablet into his storage talisman. Anyone who wants to buy on credit will be sold at the market price. Tears streamed down the man's cheeks and his heart. The expressionless crown princess was probably the world's #1 scammer. The market price was actually 10 times higher than it was now. The man felt that his heart was dripping blood. But to tell the truth, since he had given the identity tablet to the crown princess, he didn't dare to do anything to scam the crown princess. Otherwise the consequences would be hard to predict. After everyone received the flying talismans and speed talismans, they immediately imitated the little crown princess and slapped the 2 talismans on their bodies. They immediately felt the feeling of flying forward. Sure enough, their speed suddenly increased. Their feet could even leave the scalding ground, saving the soles of their feet that were about to be cooked. The crowd of practitioners suddenly felt a bit happier. They thought that the 50,000 spirit coins were well spent. The flying talisman's function was really different from ordinary talismans. Everyone lined up in 2 rows and flew forward for a long distance. Suddenly, they saw a white shadow drifting back and forth in the mountain fog. Ghost. The emotional female cultivator was so scared that she almost fell to the ground. Morong Fei was speechless. Could this young lady not be so funny? You're a high-rank spirit realm cultivator, yet you're afraid of a mere Chimei? The group didn't stop, and immediately flew over. As they got closer, they could see a white figure wearing a white dress. She was wandering back and forth, back and forth. This can't really be a mountain spirit, right? Morong Fei stuttered. To be honest, when she saw this kind of thing, she felt her hair stand on end. The white figure suddenly turned his head. His long hair was scattered in front of his eyes, covering his face. He looked like a gloomy wind, and it was quite scary. Especially this white robe and black hairstyle. It was quite scary. Several female cultivators screamed in fright and subconsciously hugged each other for warmth. Arbor also floated over. He suddenly stretched out a small claw and grabbed a section of the other's long hair, pulling it with all his strength. It seems to be a wisp of soul. Young Master Omega Kotoka glanced and said, No, it can't be. A female cultivator from the Duan clan whispered. Didn't the crown princess catch her? Chapter 4885. Wasn't the crown princess a little too weird? She could grab a soul with just a stretch of her hand. Who would believe it if they didn't see it with their own eyes? Xiaomu grabbed that soul's long hair and yanked it twice, dragging her to her side. She raised her small hand and brushed aside the messy hair covering her face, only to meet a pair of curved eyes that contained a faint smile. You! Arbor opened her mouth in surprise. Aren't you that? Arbor had a deep impression of this girl. It wasn't because of anything else, but because this girl had drifted in the void just like her. She even drifted for a longer period of time than her. However, it was hard to say. Master Jojo didn't want to recall these things. But 3,000 years in the void. Thinking of this number, Jojo felt a little shocked. It was hard to imagine how she spent 3,000 years drifting alone. At least Master Jojo had the damn tree to accompany him. Emo. Arbor stretched out a small finger and remembered her name. Who are you? You know me. This girl's voice was long, and her speech was much slower than normal people. It was as if someone had slowed her speech by 2 times. Xiaomu raised her hand and rapped her head. Why are you in a daze? Everyone. That's right. This girl looked like half a soul now. What they met in the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm last time could be her main soul. This half-soul could only form a small part of her consciousness. It didn't have the main soul's memories at all. Therefore, it was understandable that she didn't recognize him with her silly look. Arbor raised her hand and pulled her long hair. I'm your good friend, Arbor. You look very similar. Emo imitated him and raised a finger, waving it in front of Arbor. What do you mean look similar? Arbor pulled down her finger and continued to lie with an honest expression. Of course we look alike. We've met before. I knew you didn't disappear. The little monk was talking nonsense. He even said that your soul had scattered. Look, isn't there still half of your soul here? He must have been drifting in the void, and half of his soul had been sucked into this secret realm without him knowing. Ah, that's right. Did the sun and moon twin wheels run off to look for you? What about the sun-moon wheels? Have you kept the sun and moon wheels? The sacred artifact has a spirit. It should be able to help you recover your essence soul. Arbor pulled her sleeve and looked back and forth. He frowned. Where are the sun and moon wheels? Why isn't it on you? Could it be? She suddenly thought of a possibility, and her eyes lit up. There was no doubt that the sun-moon twin wheels had gone to follow Mo. However, since the aura of the sun-moon twin wheels was not present on this half of the soul, there was only one possibility. Don't be in a daze. Come out with me later. Xiaomu grumpily smacked her head. You'll definitely be saved. What's your name? Mo asked. Didn't I tell you? My name is Arbor. Don't forget it in the future. Arbor said angrily. You're so young. How can your memory be so bad? Right, what's the place in front of us? You've lived here for so long. You must know the way. Bring me there. Ah. Mo raised a finger and said slowly. There's you. What do you mean there's me? It was really hard to talk to an idiot. Chapter 4886. Ah. There's you. Mo repeated what he said just now. Even the ah he uttered was the same as before. Arbor. This scammer silently took out an image jade talisman from her pocket and pointed it at Mo. What do you mean there's me? Ah. There you. Everyone. Wasn't this scammer a scammer? Why did she have to preserve her current idiotic appearance? Was she plotting to show it to others in the future, so that they could mock her? Alright, where do we go now? I know the way. Mo said word by word. Lead the way. Mo's figure slowly turned backward. Her feet didn't touch the ground as she floated forward. Arbor used a flying talisman to follow her. Omega Kotoku and the others also hurriedly followed. At the end of the small path, a vast mountain appeared. Everyone followed Mo up the mountain. After floating for a while, they realized that they seemed to have circled back to the starting point. Why are we following this idiot? Elder Luo frowned and couldn't help but ask. Does the spirit know the way or not? I know the way. Mo said word by word. Mo, it's fine. Continue walking. Ciao ciao you. Mo raised her hand and pointed forward. Arbor turned back and looked at everyone. You all stay here first. I'll go with Mo to scout the way. Ha ha ha. The mute and talkative Do Shinwu couldn't help but blush. She pointed at her throat and glared angrily at Arbor. Dou Tingqi glanced at his sister and stammered. This isn't very appropriate. Crown Princess. We're all in the same team. How can you run alone? Then you go with Emo to scout the way. Arbor very straightforwardly took a step back. Dou Tingqi's face instantly turned pale from fright. He quickly took a step back. Morong Fei turned and glared at him. Do you think scouting is easy? That's a dangerous thing. If you're not careful, you might encounter some ultimate great saint beast. If you're so good, then go. Dou Tingqi only felt that his mouth was a little dry. He hurriedly shook his head and said, Yes, I didn't think it through. Grand Crown Princess, you go ahead. Jojo, I'll go with you. Eldest young Master Qin floated to her side with a grin. The moment he opened his mouth to speak, his second brother, Qin Xian, frowned. Arbor glanced at Big Qin expressionlessly. He didn't say whether it was possible or not and turned around. Just as he was about to leave, Emo suddenly wagged a finger at eldest young Sir Qin. You can't. Everyone was speechless. None of you can do it. Emo pointed at the disciples of the various aristocratic families who were watching from the side. A male Xiuzha in the front row was so angry that smoke came out of his head. Who can't? Not even your whole family. How could this girl speak like that? He's young and a fool. He doesn't even know how to speak. Xiaomu glared at the male cultivator that retorted. Shut up. Don't bully her because she can't outtalk you. Be careful or I'll hit you. Everyone, don't be afraid of him. Arbor patted the back of Mo's hand. Say whatever you want. Let's go. Eldest young Master Qin said speechlessly, Jojo. Arbor turned and raised his hand forcefully. He said decisively, Then it's decided. Rest here for an hour. I'll be back quickly. Finishing, he quickly pulled Emo into a nearby thicket. The two instantly floated far away. Young master, how can you let her leave by herself? Old Steward Luo's gaze flashed as he hurriedly said. Chapter 4887. When the old steward said this, Dou Xinwu and the others hastily nodded their heads. That's right. How could they let the little stoic leave by herself like this? They quickly followed old Steward Luo and pushed aside the tree branches, wanting to pass through the place Arbor and Emo left. However, an extremely heavy pressure suddenly bounced them back. After a bang sound, a terrifying buzzing sound came into their ears. Everyone felt their eardrums were about to become crooked from the vibrations, and they looked up to take a closer look. Instead, they saw an oval-shaped barrier that connected heaven and earth appeared in front of them. It was like a covered bowl, blocking all of them in here. MMPH. Dou Xinwu anxiously pointed at her throat and angrily stomped her feet. In reality, she had already cursed all 18 generations of Arbor's ancestors in her heart. This damned perverted woman actually dared to poison her mute. Right now, she must be following that mystic realm's guardian spirit into the depths of the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm to search for magic treasures first. What else could the rest of them find in the mystic realm after she had taken the initiative to stir things up? The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. However, there was nothing she could do, so Dou Xinwu angrily stomped her feet again. Unfortunately, even if she stomped through the ground, she couldn't leave this place for the time being. The boundary seal here is quite sturdy, young Master Omega Kotoka said as he tried to push out a palm. If everyone concentrates their strength to attack the same place, how long will it take to leave this place? Old Steward Luo hastily asked. It'll take at least 2 hours. Arbor followed Mo's faintly discernible figure as they flew for about 5 minutes. Seeing her stop in front of a patch of withered grass and withered leaves, Arbor looked around. What's here? Come. Emo grabbed her hand and used her sleeves to brush away the grass in front of her. Layers of grass and leaves retreated to the left and right sides, and lotus flowers of all colors bloomed in front of her eyes one after another. Arbor stared blankly for a moment and couldn't help but quicken her steps forward. From her point of view, the surface of the lake was covered with lotuses of various colors. The petals were pressed against each other, and the faint fragrance of the lotuses spread in all directions along with the lake breeze. Layers upon layers of lotus flowers interweaved together, making one feel as if they had arrived at a fairyland. Jojo. Pick pick. Emo slowly spat out a few words. He raised his hand and pointed at the lotus flowers in front of him. He pointed at the most plump lotus flower in the center that was blooming with 9-colored light, then raised his hand and patted his chest. That expression of "we're friends, you can pluck it as much as you want" really caught her off guard. Oh, okay. Arbor's eyes wandered back and forth. He tugged at Mo's hand and asked, "You've been living here all this time. Have you seen other souls?" Yes. Emo nodded his head repeatedly with an adorable look on his face. Jojo's eyes lit up. "Where is it? Take me there." Emo pulled her hand and floated towards the center of the lake for a while. Then, he pulled her to a white lotus flower and stood there. Look. Emo pushed Arbor's small body and turned her around, indicating for her to look forward. Arbor couldn't help but be dumbfounded when she saw what was in front of her. She saw an expressionless girl sitting cross-legged on a scarlet lotus flower to the side. Wasn't that signature stoic face her main body? There was actually a fourth soul remembrance here. It really was surprising. Chapter 4888. You. Emo pointed at her. Then at the soul remembrance sitting cross-legged on the white lotus. Realization dawned on Arbor at this. No wonder this idiot kept tugging at her and saying, there's yours. It turned out that she wanted to tell her that a wisp of her soul remembrance was stored here. Why wasn't she moved at all earlier, and didn't detect it at all? Confusion arose in Arbor's heart. Logically speaking, she should have detected this wisp of soul remembrance when it was so close to her. Could it be that there was an even more powerful divine sense manifestation here that blocked out all the divine senses in this space? While she was pondering, the lake water splashed, and a drenched head abruptly popped out of the water. When Arbor's eyes met his, her small mouth involuntarily gaped. This person really resembled her lotus. His features were picturesque, and his thin lips were lightly pursed. They simply looked identical. However, his eyes were as clear and pure as a fawn's. Right now, he was staring at her without blinking, and it was as if there were stars twinkling in his eyes. She watched as he popped out of the water and pounced on the lotus, looking like he was about to reach out to hug her. Lord Xiqiao did not say anything else and gave him a slap, ruthlessly slapping him into the lake. She heard the sound of water splashing, and soon, that fellow's head popped out from the bottom of the water, and he was looking at her with a confused expression. Don't think that you're my lotus just because you look like my lotus. Who exactly are you? Why are you pretending to be my lotus? That fellow soaked in the water with an aggrieved expression. Not long after he looked at her, he actually started to cry. Arbor silently took out a jade image talisman and recorded Emo Lien's crying appearance. The little stoic reflexively rubbed her stomach in thought. Child, mother saved your father's silly appearance of shedding golden beans. I'll show it to you in the future. Many years later, our dear Emo Lien would be ridiculed by her child for many years. This was a story for later. You hit me. At this time, the pitiful Emo Lien was looking at Arbor pitifully with an accusatory expression. Speak. Who are you? As soon as Xiaomu shouted, Emo Lien's thin body trembled slightly, and he confessed everything in full detail like a bamboo tube spilling beans. I am the soul and soul of Shang, the ancient Emo Lien. I have half of it in that person's sea of consciousness. Although this guy was stammering, Xiaomu was very familiar with Emo Lien's matters, so she naturally understood his meaning in a second. The ancient inheritance Emo Lien and Emo Lien's body was actually not complete. Half of it was actually lingering in the corner of the river of forgetfulness. Even he himself didn't know. Why are you here? The little fellow roared at him again. Emo Lien stammered in fear. She bit her lip and said pitifully, I've always been here. Yes, it's him, he's stupid, he doesn't know. He inherited this for so many years, but he still doesn't know. Arbor. From the looks of it, Emo Lien was indeed stupid enough. The ancient Emo Lien's inheritance in his body was not complete, yet he was still muddle-headed even now. Who are you calling stupid? Even if her husband was stupid, he could only be scolded by Jojo. No one else could scold him, not even ancient Emo Lien. I am stupid. The ancient Black Lotus pitifully followed up with this sentence. Of course you're stupid. What ancient Emolien? You can't even leave the mystic realm you set up yourself. Arbor grumpily reprimanded her. Chapter 4889. Hurry and tidy up. Bring my soul remembrance, and follow me out with Mo. Arbor shouted and beckoned to ancient Emolien, who was soaking in the water. She had to bring this fellow back. Emolien still didn't know that her lousy inheritance was only half complete. If she didn't bring him back, how could her lotus inheritance be completely passed on to ancient Emolien? Judging from this fellow's deceitful and muddle-headed appearance, he was probably also mentally retarded. Sir Jojo purposely forgot about his meditative soul remembrance. From beginning to end, that soul remembrance didn't open its eyes or speak. It didn't even show the slightest change in expression. In reality, this soul remembrance of his was more like a mentally retarded one. Jojo nah. Mo tugged on his sleeve and pointed at the lake full of lotus flowers. I'll try and see if I can refine this place later. He had already discussed with Jojo's lotus that they had to refine this pond lotus sacred realm. They had even thought of a name for this planet a while ago. Planet Jojo's lotus. Arbor delightedly thought about it and patted the back of Mo's hand. Watch me. Mo nodded at him, half understanding. He probably didn't understand what refine meant. This trip to the pond lotus sacred realm was unusually smooth. Not only did they find ancient Emolien's soul, but they also found their own. They also found Mo. Most importantly, they had the ingredients to nourish the cute little puppy. Morong Sun's awakening was just around the corner. Thinking about it this way, this trip was simply too worth it. Oh right, Xiaomu abruptly recalled something, and she grabbed the ancient black lotus's sleeve. She asked in excitement, "Can you contact the other half of your soul?" "In theory it should be possible. Why you fierce?" Ancient Emolien shrunk back, aggrieved. Xiaomu bluntly rapped his melon seed head and memorized all of his silly looks while she was at it. Jojo's lotus was ruined by this retard in front of him. Haha, try it. Arbor tugged at his sleeve. You must be able to sense where they are. Hurry up. Don't dawdle. Ancient Emolien looked pitifully at Arbor. But it needs time. I'll protect you. Arbor pulled Ancient Emolien onto a swaying lotus and patted his right shoulder. I'm counting on you. Ancient Emolien hurriedly pulled down her sleeves and retracted them from Arbor's fingers. Then you have to treat me better. Sir Jojo secretly gritted his teeth and resisted the urge to use his fist to wake her up. He revealed an intimidating smile and shouted at her. Hurry up. Ancient Emolien hurriedly sat down cross-legged and clapped her hands in front of her. Her clear eyes slowly closed. Rumble, rumble, rumble. More than 2 hours later, everyone continuously attacked a point on the seal barrier and finally broke it. Everyone's expression brightened as they cheered and ran out. The pitch-black mountain path led to the top of the mountain. There were 4 to 5 paths in total. Miss Morong, you're close to the Crown Princess. Did she tell you which path we should take? Morong Fei furrowed her brows silently. It had been nearly 4 hours since Jojo disappeared. Now, she was a little worried about her junior sister. She didn't know where her junior was at this moment. Chapter 4890. Old Steward Luo looked at the numerous mountain paths that led to the top of the mountain and muttered, "It should be that mountain path." He pointed to the third path on the left. Miss Chiao's aura faintly seeped out from there. I guess it should be this path. Everyone was in a daze. Hearing the old steward's words, they hurriedly calmed down and spread out their spiritual senses to feel. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go. A disciple of a small aristocratic family waved his arm forcefully. Without another word, he pulled his fellow disciples and strode towards the mountain path. Suddenly, 2 or 3 strange things pounced out of the grass, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they roared. Their movements were very shocking. They pounced on people when they saw them. When they opened their mouths, they revealed eerie fangs. That aristocratic family disciple was so frightened that his face turned green. He hurriedly pulled out his saber and slashed at the back of the head of the corpse puppet that was hugging him. The corpse puppet's body clearly stiffened. The aristocratic family disciple was shocked and scared, reaching out to push him away. Something unexpected happened. The corpse puppet lowered its head and opened its mouth to bite his head. Those sharp fangs pierced the top of his head and bit off half of his scalp. Ah! The emotional female Xiao stuttered. How can there be corpse puppets in a secret realm? It seems to be, it's people from our camp. Another Xiaozha hurriedly said. It's fishermen. We saved them. The fishermen of Seaside Village. What happened? How did they all turn into corpses? Impossible. This kind of natural secret realm can absorb Shin power even with a breath. It's impossible for it to mutate. Get out of the way. Duo Shanmei roared. She pulled out her long sword and cut off the arm of a corpse puppet. Yet when the arm fell to the ground, it still jumped a few times. A Xiaozha hurriedly threw a fireball over. Only then was the arm burned to ashes. Don't think about these useless things. Let's take care of them first. The underwater Abyss City Lord's mansion was transformed from a dozen large connected caves. Inside Great Lord GC's bedroom, there was a curtain made of shells and pearls. He swept open the curtains and entered the room. There was a stone table, stone stools, and an exquisitely carved stone bed. The wine vessels made of precious gems were overflowing with light. The light of the pearls illuminated the entire cave. The lithe great suzerain GC was lying on the stone bed and playing with her 10 slender fingers. When he heard his subordinate report that he had lost the chase, the great lord suddenly became ruthless. He picked up the wine vessel beside him and smashed it on the person's head with a bang. The wine vessel was made of the toughest material in the deep sea, phosphor. If it hit a person's head, it would be enough to knock them out. The subordinate immediately fell to the ground, not even able to make a sound before he died. Seeing him like this, GC angrily scolded. Useless thing. You can't even catch a few thieves who broke into the city lord's mansion. What's the point of me keeping you people? Drag him away. Drag him away. Just looking at him made him feel extremely annoyed. Go and find the 28 men that I have recently taken into my residence. Yes, great suzerain Darren. The young servant girl kneeling beside the curtain had an ugly face with a red imprint on it. She hurriedly crawled away. Useless thing. Great suzerain GC snorted. She crossed her slender legs and swayed them slightly. Her eyes unconsciously looked up. Chapter 4891. Ah! Before she could even let out a scream of terror, she was completely silenced by a handful of poison powder that came head-on. She felt a burning pain in her throat, causing her to stare at the person with the twisted face. After opening her mouth twice, she couldn't make a sound. GC understood that her voice was muffled by the poison powder thrown down by that person. The most frightening thing was that the man had been quietly lying dormant on the ceiling of the cave since some time ago. He was stuck there like a thin paper man. When she raised her head and saw such a thing, she was greatly traumatized. If anyone was in their room and saw a stranger on the ceiling, they wouldn't be able to calm down. GC scrambled to her feet and hurriedly tried to flee. Unfortunately, he bumped into the restrictive barrier and was bounced back, smashing into his stone bed with a loud thud. Although the stone bed was covered with a very soft fishskin mattress, the fall still made the great lord choke. Who are you? This great lord GC couldn't speak. She could only glare at the middle-aged man who floated down. Her eyes flickered with slight panic. She occupied the mountain and was the king. After so many years in the sacrificial sea abyss, this was the first time she suffered such a big loss. Someone actually snuck into her cave, and she didn't notice it until now. You're one of those thieves? Great Lord GC questioned the middle-aged man in front of her. However, the other party didn't even bother to look at her. He walked in front of her and slapped her body. Great Lord GC opened her mouth in pain. She watched as a black pill flew into her mouth and merged with her saliva. Great Lord GC's expression changed. She grabbed the clothes in front of her chest and retched. At this moment it was completely noisy outside. Zhuolan Mountain was in front of the cave and attracted the firepower of the entire evil kingdom. In front of everyone, it transformed into a huge snake. As it lifted its tail, the stone bricks on the cave wall rolled down. Among the more than 50 natives of the evil kingdom, at least 20 to 30 of them gathered their firepower and attacked the snake with all their might. At this critical moment, The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal appeared beside Zwalan Mountain. He grabbed his right shoulder and kept transferring saint power to him. The combined firepower of dozens of natives and the combined firepower of the two of them caused an earth-shaking collision, as if two star domains had collided. All of the aborigines were sent flying, and their wails were heard all over the place. Zwalan Mountain snorted. "You guys overestimate yourselves." One of the aboriginals who had been sent flying shouted with a face full of shock. Quickly report to the great feudal lord. Someone who's not afraid of death, came to the city lord's mansion to cause trouble." As soon as he finished his sentence, he was smashed into a pile of meat paste by the 100-meter-long tail of the humanoid snake. "You talk too much. Can't you be quieter? Are you looking for this great lord?" Prince Mo, who was disguised as a middle-aged man and had an ordinary appearance, pressed his sword against Great Lord GC's back and forced her to walk over step by step. Great Lord GC's lips trembled, as if she was so angry that she couldn't speak. However, the truth was that the poison had already dissolved in her stomach and was overturning the sea. Chapter 4892. Now, she only felt that her body was alternating between hot and cold, as though she was sitting on a small boat, bobbing up and down on the turbulent sea. She wanted to concentrate her spiritual sense, but it was extremely difficult. Everything in front of her was blurry, and the sounds by her ears seemed to be getting further and further away. She panicked for no reason, and GC raised her head strenuously, wanting to see the face of the middle-aged man in front of her clearly. But it was a pity that this was a face without any distinguishing features, and he did not look like a cultivator who had embarked on the path of cultivation. There was not the slightest change in expression on his ordinary face. No, that's not right. This person's face looked a little strange, as though it was a fake face. That's right, his face did not match his temperament that was as cold as snow. This person had changed his appearance. GC widened her eyes in shock. And just as this thought floated through her mind, she felt a sharp pain in her back. She involuntarily took a few steps forward. Great Lord! A few of the natives of the city of Sin could not help but cry out mournfully when they saw their boss being held down. GC was held down by Emolien's sword, and she walked down the stone steps step by step. Her originally charming face was now pale and distorted. "If you don't want to die, tell them not to resist and obediently throw away the weapons in their hands." Emolien sneered unrestrainedly, and the sword in her hand pierced into the woman's back. What do you want?" GC suddenly realized that she could speak, and she hurriedly shouted. "Do you know how many people there are in the Sin Kingdom? You want to rebel with just the few of you? You must be tired of living." Slap. Hearing this woman speak, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal felt extremely bored, and gave her a heavy slap across the air. Say something more practical. He did not know if he should say that she was stupid. Half of her life was in the hands of others, and she still dared to boast so shamelessly. What did she mean by tired of living? She was the one who was in a difficult situation now, wasn't she? GC had been a tyrant in the undersea abyss for so many years. She had lived a good life and had many husbands. She had never suffered like today. First he was fed poison, and then he was hung up and beaten in front of everyone. How could this not ignite the flames of depression in her heart? "Let go of our great lord." A trembling old man stepped forward and pointed at Emolien as he bellowed. "You're blaspheming our grand leader. How dare you, how dare you?" The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal glanced at him. In fact, they had already snuck into the large karst cave of the city lord's mansion 2 days ago. During this period, they had also encountered 1 or 2 guards. Relying on the password given by Omuri, they managed to survive several times. But for some reason, the password seemed to have changed today, therefore, they were exposed. Of course, it wouldn't be much of a problem if they were exposed. After all, as long as they were strong enough to crush the crowd, everything else wouldn't be a problem. After 2 days of secret contact, they discovered a very funny phenomenon. The citizens of the Sin Kingdom seemed to have been brainwashed, and they worshipped GC. Therefore, even if the distribution of resources was very unfair, and the food they found was severely exploited by the Great Lord. They still mindlessly showed a very respectful attitude to the Great Lord. They had seen this old man before them when they were worshipping in the sinkhole. He should be an old resident of the Sin Kingdom. Mo Lian raised her hand, and a sword light flashed. Chapter 4893. High Lord GC's left ear fell off, dripping with blood. The graceful Great Lord was stunned for about 3 seconds, before she let out a scream so sharp that it pierced the eardrums of others. She had never thought that the man behind her, who did not show his face, would cut off one of her ears with a single move. From now on, she would be a beauty with one less ear? With such a fatal flaw in her body, how could she look at herself in the mirror in the future? High Lord GC, who had always prided herself on being perfect, couldn't accept this fact. The piercing scream lasted for a few seconds before it was extinguished by Yuan Shurchen's slap. So noisy, Yuan Shurchen casually glanced at the woman and turned to face the citizens of the Kingdom of Sin, who had calmed down in an instant. You guys saw it. If you speak any more nonsense, your High Lord will have one less thing on her. It could be her ear, her nose, her eyes, or her mouth. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal circled around High Lord GC with a smile. The sharp dagger between his fingers slid gently across the trembling woman's face. High Lord, your left and right are not symmetrical now. High Lord GC couldn't help but tremble. In a state of inexplicable horror, she couldn't help but cry out in a trembling voice. You. Stop. You guys want. What do you want? TSK, wouldn't it have been better if we cooperated earlier? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal kept the thin, sharp dagger in his sleeve, and looked at High Lord GC with a smile. Tell me first, how did you block the realm suppression? No, how would we know? No. In the blink of an eye, GC's other ear was cut off by the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, as soon as she said that. Shenwu couldn't help but cover his eyes with his hand. Seeing this, the snake man couldn't help but sneer at him. Weren't you imprisoned by this female overlord for a while? Now that you see her miserable state, could it be that you sympathize with her? No such thing. Then why did you cover your eyes with your hands? Zhualanshan snorted with disdain. If it was me, I would first go up and slap her twice, then cut off her tongue and mouth. You little human, being so soft-hearted, you will definitely suffer a great loss in the future. Chen Wu knew that the human snake's words were crude but not crude. What he said was not completely unreasonable. He had been a soft-hearted person since he was young. Even after embarking on the path of cultivation, he didn't seem to have changed much. Because of his soft-heartedness, he had suffered countless losses. However, he could not completely get rid of this bad habit. Senior is right. Chen Wu nodded. He cupped his hands and bowed. Junior will definitely correct this bad habit of his. Snake Man glanced at him and crossed his arms. Then, he turned to look in the direction of the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. You think we're desperate to know? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal sneered. Even if you don't say it, our cultivation levels are not suppressed by the rules of this place. We're just curious. I'll say it. I'll say it. In the moment of hesitation, both of her ears were cut off. The viciousness and mercilessness of these men made GC fearful. She hurriedly revealed the truth with trembling lips. Chapter 4894. Behind my bedroom there's a sinkhole that's connected to the ancient array. I swear that everything I said is true. There's a holy treasure in the center of the array. I don't know if it's what I think it is. I suspect that the natural realm suppression here is actually caused by this array. The so-called heavenly Tao law is probably formed by this holy treasure, including the exit of the abyss of the sacrificial sea. It's probably blocked by the array. But I've studied it for many years and still couldn't find a way to break this array. We can't get out at all. Previously, the entrance of the abyss of the sacrificial sea was sealed by the aristocratic families. After a year, the seal was finally lifted. Who would have thought that there would be a ferocious beast guarding the exit? We fiddled with it for a long time, burning it with fire and stabbing it with ice thorns. Who would have thought that the holy beast would fall into a deep sleep and didn't react at all? It thought that our attacks were all child's play. Mo Lien and He Chen were speechless. So how deep was Zhualanshan's sleep? Others were using all kinds of attacks to hit his tail, but this guy could still sleep. The snake man touched his nose awkwardly and coughed lightly. You can't blame me. It's just too boring to stay in this broken place. What else could he do besides hibernating? As long as he hibernated, he could slowly recover the essence, energy, and spirit that he lost. If he hibernated for a few decades, he could recover all the holy power and vitality that he lost in the previous battle. Why wouldn't he do it? He couldn't get out either. There was a large restriction above. It was a restriction barrier created by the aristocratic families of the River of Forgetfulness. In addition, there were many people guarding above. It was blocking the exit of the citizens of the Kingdom of Sin. But even if he made way for them, they wouldn't be able to break through the barrier and walk out of the undersea abyss. Right? So it was his fault. A bunch of baffling people. Mo Lien ignored Zhualanshan, who interrupted and asked directly. Holy treasure? That's right. I suspect that it's a saint artifact that has already formed its own saint spirit. Mo Lien's eyes lit up. She thought to herself, a sacred tool that can form a holy spirit is basically one of the best in the world. Among the saint tools, only 1 in 10,000 could form a holy spirit on its own. From this, one could see how rare and precious it was. Lead the way. Mo Lien unceremoniously tied him up with a spirit-binding rope and tugged hard. Lead the way. GC was tripped by an elegant floor-length dress and almost fell down. Mo Lien had already tossed the spirit-binding rope to Chen Wu. Shen Wu subconsciously grabbed the rope and pulled on GC's body that was tilting to the side. When the great leader turned around, her beautiful eyes immediately widened. You were the one from before, little one? Kid. She had a very deep impression of this brat. It was a kind of hatred that came from not being able to get what she wanted. This brat didn't want to be with her no matter what. In the end, he would rather be taken to the deprivation sinkhole by her than give in to her. Since she was destined to not be able to get this man, then no one else would be able to get him in this life. That was exactly what GC was thinking when she ordered her lackey to send Shen Wu on his way. But now Shen Wu was actually still alive. Chapter 4895. Yet, she was on the verge of death. Things in this world were truly complicated and ever-changing. In the past, GC would never have believed that she would one day be reduced to such a miserable state. Old Zhang, what should we do now? Several natives of the Sin Kingdom surrounded the old man, who was worshipping in the sinkhole, and secretly rubbed their palms anxiously. The old man trembled as he took a few more steps forward and knelt down. He clasped his hands together and bowed to the sky. He shouted at the top of his lungs, "Heavens above, you can't treat GC like this. If it weren't for GC leading us to build a city and a home here, we would have died long ago. GC is our benefactor. What do you outsiders want to do to the High Lord?" Mo Lien glanced at him coldly. Don't act like you have a deep grudge. You only have yourself to blame. Over the years, many people have died in your hands. You gutter rats, what right do you have to negotiate with me? Let's go. Mo Lien reprimanded coldly. Shen Wu immediately straightened his body and pulled GC. Lead the way. GC took a deep breath, pursed her lips and said, I've said what I should say. As long as I take you to the center of the array, you will let me go, right? You don't have the right to negotiate with us. Yuan Shurchen smiled and shook her finger at her. I advise you to lead the way and stop talking nonsense. Unless you want to lose something on your face? GC shuddered. The more she looked at these ordinary-looking young men and middle-aged men, the more they looked like monsters from hell. They were ugly, but their hearts were even uglier. How could there be such a monster in this world? Snake Man secretly glanced at GC and asked Yuan Shurchen, Is that woman cursing us in her heart? The look in his eyes was strange, as if he was looking at something dirty. Yuan Shurchen reached out and pulled him up. He followed up and said indifferently, She's cursing you. GC's so-called sleeping palace was actually just a large cave that had been pieced together by a few caves. considering the harsh living conditions here. The extent of this woman's extravagance could be said to have reached a point that made one's hair stand on end. Small holes were chiseled into the walls on both sides of the cave. Round gemstones of various colors were embedded in the holes. The multicolored lights connected into a line, and these underwater gems emitted the purest and most transparent light. Emolienne suddenly raised her hand, and a few dumb-looking mechanical puppets suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Collect. Be gentle. With a swipe of his hand, he took out a few gaudy cloth bags with ink-colored lotus flowers embroidered on them, and tossed them to the golems. After the group of golems received the order, they immediately turned around and walked over together, starting to get busy. Dig out the various round gemstones on the cave walls. Wuxia was speechless. The snake man was dumbfounded. He couldn't help but glance at Lord Emolienne. What is he doing? This was daylight robbery. Could this guy be any more shameless? He had painstakingly collected so many shells, pearls, and gemstones of the underwater abyss, but they all ended up in the hands of this shameless guy. Don't leave anything out. That box. Chapter 4896. The ruby on the box is not bad. Forget it. Don't bother if you can't take it off. Take it along with the box. Everyone was speechless. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's mouth twitched. He couldn't help but facepalm. My heavens. Look at how Xiao this trash's daily actions had led Emolienne, that trash astray. Wasn't he supposed to be a serious and cold crown prince? What had he become now? You. Great Overlord GC's eyes rolled back. She fainted from anger. Emolienne glanced at her. Then she pointed at a golem and said, "Slap her." That golem walked forward in a daze. Without a word, it slapped Great Overlord GC's tender face twice. Great Overlord GC, who woke up, spat out a mouthful of blood. She was so angry that she fainted again. Oh my god. Emolienne is really capable. She actually made Great Overlord GC faint twice in a row. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal supported himself against the wall, but he staggered and nearly lost his footing. He cursed inwardly, "It's over." Sir Xiao has definitely led Emolienne further and further down the path of evil. What does it mean to be marked by the company one keeps? This is probably it. Shen Wu tugged on the spirit-binding rope and pulled Great Overlord GC up from the ground. The golem raised its black stone arm and slapped GC twice, waking her up from her stupor. Continue leading the way. Emolienne's emotionless and cold voice entered Great Overlord GC's ears. Her entire body quivered, and her legs couldn't help but tremble. If she dared to faint again, Emolienne would definitely let her have a taste of the 18 slaps. Great Overlord GC didn't need to look in the mirror to imagine how swollen her face was right now. Tears streamed down her face. She had never been so angry in her life. Why didn't she explode from anger? For so many years, she had been used to living in the undersea abyss. How could she accept such treatment? If she cries again, I'll gouge her eyes out, Emolienne said coldly. GC's pitiful tears welled up in her eyes. She did her best to hold them back. At this moment, if GC could howl towards the sky, she would definitely cry out bitterly. It's so hard to live. Just how unlucky must you be to encounter such a fiendish star that didn't give you any reason at all? Wuxia facepalmed again. Bro, you're too cruel. Emolienne was a typical example. He was full of love and patience when it came to his wife, but when it came to other people, he would be all kinds of irritated and long-winded. So shut up. What an emotional guy. Wuxia pursed his lips. GC bitterly shed a few tears, but in the end, he impatiently scolded her. He didn't even allow her to cry crazy. This extremely vile behavior was simply outrageous. Great Overlord GC's two noodle legs trembled as she led them through the winding karst cave for less than half an hour. Pushing aside the barrier blocking the entrance of the karst cave, GC let everyone out of her bedroom. She pointed at the deep square pit in front of them. It sits right there. I can't get close. If I go over, I'll be thrown out. As soon as she finished speaking, she found that her head was moving forward. She was kicked out by someone. Dong! A loud sound rang out. Great Overlord GC crashed into a transparent barrier. Chapter 4897. This collision caused her to see stars. She fell limply to the ground and fainted again. At this moment, GC's appearance was very miserable. She no longer looked like a high-spirited local tyrant. Not only had her ears turned into a bloody mess, her forehead had also collided with the barrier. Now there was a ridiculous bump on her forehead. This GC lay on the ground miserably. Her mouth was slightly open, and her breathing was heavy. Her expression was conflicted and indignant. Her eyes were tightly shut, and she was unwilling to open them. She did not want to see those disgusting and ugly people anymore. And in front of everyone, transparent barriers appeared. The square pit in the middle was rather far away from the barrier. To be honest, everyone could not see what was inside at the moment. Kick her awake, Emolien said coldly. Just as the golem was about to jump forward and kick her again, GC, who had lost her ears, sat up straight and said expressionlessly, "I can't remove this barrier." She spoke quickly. The reason I guessed that this array formation was the source of the restriction was because behind this barrier, there was an inconspicuous little fruit tree. Back then, the first batch of people who came here all ate the sour and astringent fruits on the tree and removed the restriction on our cultivation. Shenwu said with a look of realization. Oh, so you are the only batch of people who were not suppressed by the natural laws. No, what the Grand Lord meant was that the law of nature's suppression was largely dependent on the formation in front of him. Emolien walked a few steps around the transparent barrier. When he stopped, the venerable peach blossom immortal floated to his side and asked impatiently, "How is it? Can you find a way out?" Emolien frowned and did not speak. He stared at the transparent barrier in front of him and thought calmly, "How is it? What array formation is this? Why is it in the abyss of the sacrificial sea? This should be an array formation left behind by the heavenly axiom," Emolien said indifferently. "This should be the place where the heavenly axiom placed the Tower of Punishment." Hushirchen. Emolien raised his hand and pointed. The barrier in front of him immediately collapsed. GC stared blankly, cold sweat dripping down her forehead. Only now did she know exactly what kind of fiendish star she had provoked earlier. This barrier had been combined with the power of so many people for so many years, but it had never been opened on its own. Now, it was directly broken by the power of someone else's finger. What kind of disparity was this? It was like the difference between heaven and earth. The snake man's small body jumped up and slapped his thigh hard. So all of this is still the work of that old bastard heavenly axiom? Emolien and Yuan Shirchen ignored him. They stepped over the broken barrier and came to the edge of the square pit in the middle. The natives of the Kingdom of Sin stared nervously at Emolien and He Chun, shouting, "What are you doing? And are you trying to blaspheme the gods?" They followed them over, and each of them stared fixedly at Emolien and He Chun with vigilant gazes. "We were the ones who discovered this sacred artifact first." "Yes, you can't touch the sacred artifact." The venerable peach blossom immortal glanced at them and casually looked into the pit. He instantly felt as if he was struck by lightning. There seemed to be nothing in the pit. Seeing how nervous these people were, they were all mumbling, as if they were possessed by something. At this moment, the elders who were worshipping the giant pit also realized that there was nothing in the pit. Chapter 4898. These citizens of the Sin Kingdom all had a look of disbelief on their faces. They looked at each other suspiciously. One of them suddenly roared, "Old Joe, is it you? You sneaked in and took away the sacred artifact. You already had the heart to steal the sacred artifact? What? Don't slander me. Who took away the sacred artifact? I haven't even seen what the sacred artifact looks like. Have you seen the sacred artifact before? What does the sacred artifact look like? Tell me." That person snorted embarrassedly. The sacred artifact is usually shrouded in a ball of light. Who can see it clearly? Okay, stop arguing. Let's see if the sacred artifact is still in the pit. Where is the shadow of the sacred artifact in the pit? That's right. This pit is obvious at a glance. It's basically, just when everyone was arguing, a child's little paw suddenly grabbed one of the people's shoes. The man was shocked. When he looked down, he saw a pale little paw on his shoe. He almost peed his pants on the spot. Ghost child. His lingered in the air. Before he could finish his words, he was sent flying by a strong force and fell heavily into the pit. Everyone was shocked by this unforeseen event and quickly took a few steps back. At the same time, they saw a naked 3-year-old child jumping up from the edge of the pit. His little hands and feet moved nimbly. He jumped onto the foot of a practitioner and stepped on it. His little body jumped up 1 or 2 meters. She raised her leg and kicked the mouth of the unlucky cultivator. His messy roar in the wind was completely stopped in the deep pit. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at the unlucky practitioner, who was kicked by the child. This guy was like a kite with a broken string. He flew into the pit and fell head first. With a cracking sound, no one knew if his teeth were broken or his chin was broken. He was in so much pain that he covered his face with both hands and rolled back and forth in the pit. When the others saw this, they hurriedly retreated. Each of them stared at the lively little brat who was running back and forth around the crowd, as if they were looking at a monster. This little demon ran 1 round and kicked 2 people flying, then ran another round and kicked a few more people flying. After a few laps, the pit was filled with wailing unlucky people. Outside the pit, only Emolien, Hejechen and a few others had not been poisoned. The little rascal scampered around and stopped in front of Emolien. He tilted his little head and looked up at her. Puffing his cheeks, he scolded, "Who are you?" Yuan Shurchen restrained himself and coughed lightly. "A sacred artifact's spirit transformation? How dare you?" The child put her hands on her hips and angrily rebuked. "Where did this mountain spirit come from? How dare you be so rude to me? Call me Lord Guangguang." Wu Shurchen was speechless. The venerable peach blossom immortal smiled at him and waved his hand. Lord Guangguang ran to the venerable peach blossom immortal's side with his bare little body. Before he could speak, the smiling man turned hostile and mercilessly knocked him on the head. "Tell me, what kind of divine weapon are you?" The venerable peach blossom immortal reached out and picked up the little ghost. "If you don't tell me, I'll beat you back to your original form. How dare you?" The little fellow let out an angry shriek. He struggled with his little arms and legs and said angrily, "How dare you be so rude to Lord Guangguang? I'm warning you. Hurry up and release Lord Guangguang. Otherwise I'll make you." Chapter 4899. The Holy Spirit was momentarily at a loss for words. After thinking for a long time, he said angrily, Eat? You still have to take it after eating it? You can't even speak coherently, yet you're still learning to speak harshly." The venerable peach blossom immortal curled his lips and tapped his bald little head with a finger. "What kind of divine artifact is this? How dare you?" A certain Holy Spirit shook his limbs in exasperation. He opened his mouth and shouted, "You ugly freak! You're not allowed to hug me. Let me tell you, you're all too ugly. I swear I won't form a contract with you even if I die. Give up on this idea. Even if you cry and kneel and beg me, I won't want you. Humph." Wu Shurchen, Emolien. This fellow was actually a dog for looks? What exactly was this thing that gave birth to such a strange divine artifact spirit? Looking at it, it didn't look like some unknown little divine artifact. It had to be a natural divine artifact that had formed a spirit after thousands of years, right? Why did it look like it deserved a beating? No one wants to form a contract with you. Emolien, this venomous tongue, started to display his specialty again. "You look like you're useless with short arms and legs. Other than being able to eat, you probably can't do anything else. Whoever wants to form a contract with you is unlucky. Wu Shurchen, will you die if you don't speak venomously?" Look at how this child's eyes were red, and he was about to cry. "What do you have to do with the heavenly Tao? You look like a naturally formed divine artifact. Logically speaking, after forming intelligence, you shouldn't look like a child. Could it be that the heavenly Tao suppressed you to this state?" Wu Shurchen casually deduced, his tone revealing a hint of schadenfreude. As expected, the heavenly Tao, this old fellow, attacked whoever it saw, without exception. Seeing that the naturally formed divine artifact had formed intelligence and was about to form a spirit body, the heavenly Tao actually sinisterly set up a large array to suppress others. Alright, this matter should be clear now. This deep pit at the bottom of the sea was not to trap others at all, but to trap this divine artifact. The heavenly Tao was tricking the divine artifact. In the end, it happened to meet the aristocratic families of the River of Forgetfulness, and found such an excellent treasure ground to expel the traitors. Thus, these people were all tricked by the heavenly Tao and divine artifact. Ha 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 ha. Why does it feel so funny? Student He-Chen smiled and touched the Holy Spirit's bald head. Guang Guang. Lord Guang Guang. Puff, alright Lord Guang Guang. Why don't you tell us what you are? Why does the heavenly Tao want to trick you like this? Speaking of this, the child's eyes turned red. He-Chen pulled a cloth from the side and wiped the child's red eyes. He coaxed softly, "Don't cry, Guang Guang. Uncle will take you out, okay? I'll introduce you to a friend with the same bald head to play with you, okay?" The Holy Spirit sobbed, and its eyes suddenly lit up. It automatically blocked the words bald head and asked anxiously, "Can you get out?" "Of course, we just need to break the formation before us." Wah! Unexpectedly, when the child heard this, he immediately cried out, "Then you won't be able to get out. The heavenly Tao used my body to set up a formation core at the bottom of the pit. You can't destroy it. My body is very sturdy. It can't be smashed or damaged. No matter what, it can't be broken. We can't get out, sob sob sob. We can't get out, sob 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 sob." Emolian flipped her hand and slapped the deep pit. The shrimps in the kingdom of sin in the pit were so frightened that they fled in all directions. Chapter 4900. What are you doing? You. The man called Old Joe gritted his teeth and shouted. When he saw Emolian's cold face, he swallowed the rest of his words. Although the middle-aged man in front of him looked ordinary, his pair of phoenix eyes were especially frightening. It was so cold that it made people fearful. "Quick look, it's a sacred weapon, a sacred weapon." Someone shouted. Everyone's gaze was attracted to him. A ball of light appeared at the bottom of the pit. It was so bright that people couldn't help but reach out to block their eyes. If they continued to stare at the ball of light, they would immediately go blind. Yu-Chen swung his hand and used a vine whip to whip it, but it failed to whip away the ball of light. Instead, it allowed the ball of light to roll a few feet along the vine and hang in the middle of the pit. It was like a radiation source, so bright that people couldn't open their eyes. This light is too dazzling. Yeah, what is this sacred weapon? For so many years, we have been trying to figure out what it is, but we haven't been able to see it clearly. Old Joe sighed and said, "It seems that I have no fate to see its true appearance in this lifetime." That's not necessarily true," another person stammered. "With those sirs here, I think that we might really see the true appearance of the sacred weapon today. But this sacred weapon probably had no fate with them. With so many experts here, it was impossible for them to snatch the sacred weapon. The sacred weapon had already formed a sacred spirit and had its own consciousness. Among these people, the only ones who could catch the sacred weapons were definitely not ordinary cultivators like them." "Sigh, what a pity." Old Joe and the others cursed in their hearts. Emolian raised her hand and pointed. A cluster of burning sacred fire suddenly fell into the pit. It circled around the ball of light and rolled out black hot flames. Great feudal Lord GC, who had been lying on the ground pretending to be dead, couldn't help but widen her eyes. She shouted in her heart, "Black fire? It's actually a black sacred fire? Damn, who the hell is this person? Why did he come to the bottom of the sacrificial sea abyss?" The sacred fire burned the ball of light and peeled it off, revealing the true form of the sacred weapon inside. "This is..." Old Joe and the others widened their eyes in shock as they looked at the original form of the saint artifact that had been peeled off. Their expressions were filled with disbelief. "Actually, it's a mirror. It's a mirror." Everyone shouted. What mirror is this? It looks very ordinary." It was indeed very ordinary. Right now, in front of everyone, suspended high in the air, was a small handheld mirror. The edges of the ink-colored mirror were engraved with fine markings. It was a small mirror that seemed a little too small to hold in one's hand. It was actually an ancient saint weapon that could form a saint spirit. This type of saint artifact was not a man-made weapon. Instead, it was a natural artifact that had been exposed to the light of time. How dare you? Lord Guangguang, who was in Ji Chen's arms, opened and closed his small mouth as he angrily rebuked. Ignorant humans, what kind of expression is that? He actually dared to look at Master Guangguang with a suspicious gaze. He must be tired of living. Ma Yingchen sneered. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly saw the air fluctuate slightly. Jojo's small face suddenly appeared among the ripple-like phantoms. What are you doing? Arbor roared at the floating phantoms in front of him. It's been so long and you still haven't come back. What are you waiting for? Chapter 4901. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal touched his ordinary youthful face, his eyes full of surprise. I've already become like this, yet you can still recognize me? Jojo. Emo Lien pushed him away with one hand, a trace of joy flashing across his phoenix eyes. Jojo, why did you suddenly appear? He raised a slender finger and touched the ripple-like illusion in front of him. Arbor's eyes lit up. She pulled ancient Emo Lien over with one hand and raised her hand to pinch his face. Ancient Emo Lien started to cry pitifully. Emo Lien. Why was this strange feeling of looking at oneself in the mirror and seeing one's own face cry so strange? Ma Shurchen stared blankly for a moment, then suddenly burst into laughter. What the fuck? What the fuck? Emo Lien was actually crying in front of him. He was crying. Ha 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 ha, it was Emo Lien. It was that high-spirited and insufferably arrogant bastard. He was actually crying. Arbor poked ancient Emo Lien's face and said crisply, Hubby, did you know? The ancient Emo Lien seal in your body is incomplete. I found half of ancient Emo Lien's soul in the Pond Lotus Sacred Land. That's how I was able to connect him to the half of your soul in your body. Look, doesn't he look exactly like you? Arbor felt that the ancient Emo Lien in front of her was like a large wooden doll, being manipulated by others. It was very comical. Emo Lien looked at his wife speechlessly, then looked at her with a pitiful expression. Jojo. The way his wife had pinched ancient Emo Lien just now, it was as if she was pinching an idiot. It was extremely infuriating. Why was his wife so mean? She must have purposely squeezed the ancient black lotus until it cried why? Emo Lien's head was filled with questions. His wife was really scary. His wife had actually been secretly harboring bad intentions. She wanted him to cry and scream. What a bad person. On the side, Ji-Chen was laughing uncontrollably. He glanced at Emo Lien and remarked, I didn't expect that the Crown Prince Emo, who has always been wise and mighty, actually didn't even know that the ancient Black Lotus seal was incomplete. What a retard. Ha 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 ha. Emo Lien turned her head and glared fiercely at him. Don't think that just because he didn't finish his sentence, he didn't know that this guy was secretly mocking him. Uffed. Ma Yingchen tried to hold back her laughter, but she couldn't. She laughed out loud cheerfully. Do you need help? Help your ancestors. Emo Lien glared at him again before turning her head to look at Arbor, which was faintly discernible in the water ripples. Jojo, why did you go to the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm? Arbor stopped joking and stared at her husband. After a long pause, just when Emo Lien thought that his wife was finally going to talk about serious matters with him, his wife deliberated before saying, It's a long story. Yuan Shurchen. Emo Lien. It's me who shouldn't have had such high expectations for my wife. She wasn't cut out for telling stories. The little stoic looked at Rotten Peach Blossom with a taut face before looking at Jojo's lotus. She harumphed and said, You guys actually had so much fun in the undersea abyss that you forgot home. Of course not. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hastily waved his hand. We missed you so much, Jojo. Emo Lien missed you every day, and was constantly worried about whether you ate your fill. Arbor's eyes brightened. I ate quite well. Everyone. She suddenly thought of something and said joyfully, Jojo's lotus, let me tell you. Chapter 4902. How dare you? Right at this moment, Lord Guangguang, who had been ignored for a long time, suddenly let out a loud shout. It was a pity that he was small and weak, and his voice was also childish, which really did not have any majesty. Arbor's gaze finally fell on the child in He-chen's arms through the water ripple's illusion. Who is this little brat? Who are you? How can you open up this space-time passage and appear here in the form of an illusion? The girl in this illusion was too strange. This place was extremely deep in the sea abyss, with its light-congealing mirror as the heart of the array, an isolation array set up by the heavenly Tao. Logically speaking, no matter who it was impossible to come here in the form of a soul, and would definitely be isolated outside. But why did she? How dare you, female thief? Who are you to the heavenly Tao? Arbor stared at the little brat with a stupefied expression, staring at him through the screen. If this little brat was in front of her at this moment, she would definitely pull him over and give him a good beating. Do you know how to speak human language? Who is a female thief? Who is a female thief? Your whole family is female thieves. Speak. You are the heavenly Tao. Lord Guangguang raised his hand to cover his bald head, turning his little face to stare at He-chun with grief and indignation. How dare you, a junior, be so rude to Lord Guangguang? Ridiculous. Despicable. Extremely rude. He-chun raised his hand to pat his smooth head. Shut up, you. So long-winded. Didn't he see that his Lord Jojo's pair of watery eyes were already starting to emit fire? You dare to tell Lord Guangguang to shut up? Lord Guangguang said with a face full of anger. He-chun looked at him speechlessly. This fellow actually dared to call himself Lord in front of Lord Jojo. Was he looking for a beating? Who is this little brat? Jojo. He is the holy spirit of the sacred weapon light-congealing mirror. Mo Lien raised his hand and held the child in his hand. What do you think? Arbor blinked and subconsciously raised her hand to touch her belly. She did not know if it was her misconception, but when her husband brought the light-congealing mirror Holy Spirit over, her little belly seemed to inexplicably warm. Could it be that my baby is interested in this light-congealing mirror? A strange light flashed through Arbor's mind. He immediately nodded expressionlessly and said, It's pretty good. Let's keep it first. Everyone was speechless. You're talking about a saint spirit as if it's nothing. Keep it. Do you think I'm collecting trash? Master Guangguang immediately understood Arbor's words. Luan Yuan's eyes were filled with anger as she said, Audacious woman. Don't think that I'll contract with you just because you're pretty. My contract also depends on fate. You and me. They were not meant to be. Don't force it. The corners of Ma Shurchen's mouth twitched, and he quickly suppressed the urge to burst into laughter. I can't take it anymore. It's so fucking painful. Why did he feel like this condensing mirror Holy Spirit was a retard? Could he be any more childish and shameless? Arbor looked at the Holy Spirit of the light-congealing mirror in astonishment. He thought to himself, this Holy Spirit actually doesn't like Lord Jojo? Little guy, you're pretty good. Arbor suddenly raised her hand and placed it on her belly. This time, she really felt a wave of heat drifting over. It wasn't her imagination. Lord Jojo's eyes brightened. He rubbed his belly and lowered his head to mutter, Don't worry, baby. Your father is keeping this light-congealing mirror. I'll give it to you later. Could it be that her baby had formed a vague self-awareness at this time? Wasn't this perception a little frightening? Mo Lien, who was looking at Jojo through the water ripples, only saw his wife mutter to herself. Chapter 4903. Because of the water ripples, he could only see Lord Jojo's upper body, and did not see her rubbing her stomach. Arbor raised her head and looked at her husband. She said happily, Jojo's lotus, keep this light-congealing mirror and give it to me later. Mo Lien quickly nodded. Xiao Xiao. I also found a large batch of multicolored underwater gemstones for you. Do you like them? Multicolored underwater gems. Arbor's eyes lit up again. She was overjoyed. She loved shiny things the most. Her husband was indeed the best to Jojo. Hastily nodding her small head, Xiaomu hastily asked, Hubby, when are you coming back? We'll be out soon after we break this isolation array. Jojo, wait for me at the River of Forgetfulness. Don't run too far. Okay, I'll wait for you at the River of Forgetfulness. Arbor added in her heart. I'll wait for you at the entrance of the sacrificial sea abyss where you disappeared. I won't run too far. The scene in front of her suddenly blurred. Arbor grabbed Mo Lien, who was beside her. What's going on? Why did the image suddenly become so blurry? Logically speaking, half of ancient Emolien's soul was with her, and the other half was in Emolien's consciousness. As long as they wanted to, they could communicate with each other without any hindrance. As long as Emolien's consciousness was strong enough, it was impossible to break the connection. As far as she knew, Emolien's consciousness should be about the same as hers. She should have at least reached the 12th level of consciousness. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for such a sudden interruption of divine sense to occur. Unless something happened on his side. Husband, what's going on over there? Arbor wished she could pounce on the water ripples and use her hands to smooth out the floating creases and see the situation inside the water ripples. But the water ripples were shaking so violently that she could not tell what was going on over there. Her heart was in her throat when she did not know the situation. The relaxed and carefree atmosphere was destroyed in an instant. At the same time, Ma Shurchen deftly shoved Emolien, causing him to stagger. He then turned around and hacked down with his sword, blocking a glowing red claw. Clang! The claw shook his wrist and made it slightly numb. GC, who was rolling and crawling on the ground, raised her eyes slightly and saw that the ordinary-looking young man's appearance had suddenly changed under the roasting of a ball of fire. Her facial features, which were originally not very outstanding, seemed to have transformed into a butterfly. Little by little, they were reorganized and restored to their original beautiful appearance. GC's eyes were wide open. She opened her mouth and quickly turned to look at the ruthless middle-aged man. At this moment, there was no sign of the middle-aged man. The young man, who was holding a slender black sword, smirked. His eyes were sharp as he leaped to the side of the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. Why did you roll over here? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal pushed him without thinking. Hurry up and scram. Don't get in the way here. You have estimated wrongly. Emolien's voice was cold, but her eyes were gloomy. The ancient suppression array created by the heavenly axiom is not to suppress the light congealing mirror, but the ferocious beast sealed in the light congealing mirror. Roar! A violent roar came from the light congealing mirror. The light congealing mirror Holy Spirit lay on Ma Yinchen's back, trembling. Her small hand grabbed his hair, and she said with a pale face, Hurry, hurry. Hurry up and suppress it. Chapter 4904. You cheater, you still have the nerve to yell here. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal slapped his bald head. Why didn't you say that the formation was suppressing this ferocious beast? If they had known earlier, they wouldn't have touched the array at all. Finding another way was much more reliable than fighting a 10,000-year-old ferocious beast. I just wanted to get rid of this formation. I didn't expect that chaos. You actually took the opportunity to escape. This retarded light congealing mirror really killed him. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was furious. The light congealing mirror Holy Spirit's two small hands were still tightly wrapped around his neck as it stuttered. Quick, protect Master Guangguang. Primal chaos is coming out. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal felt as if 10,000 horses were galloping through his heart. Handan? Emolien frowned. Could it be the ancient ferocious beast Handan? Roar. The only response he got was half of a huge body peeking out from the small mirror. It had 6 legs and 4 wings, and it was as red as fire. It was the ferocious beast Chaos that was recorded in the records of mountains and rivers. For a moment, the small black mirror with fine lines hanging high in the air was surrounded and burning by a ball of raging flames. The Chaos ferocious beast walked out from the center of the mirror. It reached out with its crimson claws and slapped toward He Shurchen again. Yichen dodged backwards and hurriedly pushed Emolien, who was beside her. The primordial chaos has removed the suppression array from the inside. Hurry, find a chance to leave immediately. Take good care of Jojo, Yuan Shurchen instructed. Scram. Emolien held Raven Moon in his hand and glanced at him with a straight face. Go out and tell her yourself. Roar. The primordial chaos spread its 4 wings and covered the sky. Its roar shook the earth and mountains. The karst cave in front of them collapsed due to the tremors. Gravel rolled down, and smoke and dust filled the air. Shen Wu tightly gripped his sword with both hands. He turned his head to take a look, his expression, as if he had been struck by lightning. Seniors Villan Mountain, what are you doing? The man in the snake shrank back and did not move forward. Now he had returned to his human face and snake body form. His entire snake body was coiled tightly around the trunk of a nearby tree, pretending to be dead and motionless. Both of them were saint beasts. Why are you so far behind him? The difference was like heaven and earth. Look at the other beasts of chaos. Then look at yourself. Don't you feel ashamed? Shen Wu's gaze did not provoke the human snake. He was still lying on the tree trunk, pretending to be dead and motionless. He didn't show any intention of moving. If it was possible, he would grow on this tree forever, never to move an inch ever again. Roar, roar, roar. The chaos beast roared at Emolien and the others. He suddenly sucked in a breath. All of a sudden, a strong wind blew and sucked everyone forward. The natives of the Sin Kingdom were so scared that their faces turned ashen. He felt as if he was being sucked in by this fierce gust of wind, and he couldn't help but roll and crawl in that direction. Ah! Ah! Shouts could be heard one after another. Great feudal Lord GC's face was pale as she grabbed the long grass on the ground, trying to stabilize herself. However, the strong wind blew, and she couldn't control her body at all. With a cry of surprise, she was already lifted up by the wind. She somersaulted 3 times and was sucked in. Go! Yuan Shurchen didn't hesitate and slapped Emolien. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.